Welcome. I'm Magnus, and I bring you horror stories to help you relax, or maybe to keep you up at night. Tell us where you're from. Are there spooky forests nearby? If you're a fan of scary stories, subscribe and drop a like. Get cozy, and let's begin. My name is Vance Mercer, 32 years old, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. Architecture has always been my passion, but lately, the constant noise and pressure of the city have been suffocating me. That's why when my college buddy Eli suggested we take a trip to the Shawnee National Forest in southern Illinois to stay in one of those restored fire lookout towers, I jumped at the chance. Eli had brought along his cousin, Darius, who I'd never met before, a quiet guy with intense eyes who seemed to analyze everything around him. The 3-hour drive from Columbus stretched into 5 as we hit traffic outside Indianapolis. By the time we reached the ranger station near Harrisburg, Illinois, the sun was already setting. The ranger, a weathered man named Hank with skin like tanned leather, eyed us with what I initially took as typical small-town suspicion of outsiders. He handed us the keys to the bald knob lookout tower with a hesitancy that should have been my first warning. "You boys sure about this?" he asked, his calloused fingers lingering on the keyring. "Tower's been renovated for recreation, but it's pretty isolated. No cell service up there. Radio only for emergencies." He tapped a bulky walkie-talkie that he pushed across the counter. When I reached for it, he didn't let go immediately. "Weather reports calling for storms this weekend." I assured him we'd be fine. We were prepared for rain, had plenty of supplies, and were looking forward to the isolation. That was the whole point, after all. Darius stood silently by the doorway, examining a faded trail map on the wall, while Eli chatted up the ranger about fishing spots. Looking back, I should have noticed how Darius kept checking his watch, or how his eyes darted to the windows whenever headlights swept across the parking lot. The drive to the lookout tower took another 40 minutes, the last 10 on a rutted dirt road that had my Subaru Forester bottoming out more than once. The tower loomed against the darkening sky, a strange, angular silhouette rising above the tree-line. 4 stories tall with a small cabin perched on top, it looked both inviting and somehow wrong, like it was watching us approach. Eli whistled low. "Damn, this is going to be epic," he said, grabbing his backpack from the trunk. I remember standing at the base, looking up at the metal staircase spiraling around the tower's exterior. The wind had picked up, making the whole structure creak and moan. For a brief moment, I had the irrational thought that the tower didn't want us there. Darius must have sensed my hesitation because he clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You good?" he asked, the first words he'd spoken directly to me all day. Something in his tone made me wonder if he was asking about more than just my momentary pause. As we climbed the stairs, our footsteps echoed metallically into the forest below. Each landing offered a more expansive view of the surrounding wilderness, miles of unbroken forest stretching in every direction. By the time we reached the cabin at the top, darkness had fallen completely. The glass-walled room offered a 360-degree view that would have been spectacular in daylight, but at night just reflected our own faces back at us. 3 men isolated in a box of mirrors suspended above an ocean of trees. "Home sweet home," Eli said, dropping his gear and immediately heading for the cabinet where we'd been told we'd find emergency supplies and a logbook. I started unpacking our food while Darius methodically checked the windows, the door, the small wood stove in the corner. He pulled curtains closed on each window, defeating the purpose of staying in a lookout tower, I thought, but I didn't comment. We were all tired from the drive. That first night passed uneventfully, though I barely slept. The tower swayed slightly in the wind, a gentle rocking that might have been soothing if not for the constant creaking of metal against metal. I kept waking, disoriented, certain I'd heard voices carried on the wind, fragments of conversation. Maybe laughter, maybe screams. But each time I looked out, there was nothing but darkness and the occasional glint of moonlight on the metal railings. Morning brought fog so thick I couldn't see the ground below. We were floating in a sea of white, completely isolated. The radio crackled with the morning weather report, storms moving in by evening, possible severe conditions. Eli suggested we hike one of the nearby trails before the weather turned, but Darius seemed reluctant to leave the tower. "I'll stay here," he said, his eyes on the fog. "Set up camp properly." I should have wondered why he needed to set up camp in what was essentially a cabin, but I was eager to explore. The hike started pleasantly enough, Eli and I following a narrow trail that wound through stands of oak and hickory. The fog began to lift, revealing glimpses of the landscape. But about 2 miles in, we found something disturbing, a campsite that looked like it had been abandoned in a hurry. A tent was half collapsed, sleeping bags still inside. A cook stove had tipped over, food scattered and rotting. Most concerning was the vehicle nearby, a Jeep with its doors hanging open, keys still in the ignition. Should we call someone? I asked, forgetting momentarily that our phones had no service. Eli picked up a backpack lying near the tent and rummaged through it. ID says Thomas Wells from Chicago, he reported, holding up a wallet. Dated receipt in here from 3 days ago. We searched the area, calling out, but received no response. Just as we were debating whether to head back to the tower and radio the ranger station, we heard it. A distant scream that might have been human or might have been an animal in distress. We made the decision to return to the tower immediately. The path seemed different going back, narrower, overgrown in places where it hadn't been before. Twice we had to backtrack after losing the trail. The fog was returning, thicker now, and I couldn't shake the feeling we were being followed. Every few minutes, I turned suddenly, certain I'd catch someone ducking behind a tree. But there was never anyone there, just shadows and mist, and the increasingly urgent sense that we needed to get back. When we finally spotted the tower through the trees, something was wrong. The door at the base stood open, swinging slightly in the wind. I was certain we'd locked it behind us. More disturbing were the muddy footprints leading up the metal stairs, too many for just Darius, and some looked like they'd been made by bare feet. Eli called up, "Darius? You okay, man?" No response came from above. We climbed the stairs cautiously, calling Darius's name at each landing. The tower felt different, colder, more hostile somehow. When we reached the cabin, we found Darius sitting calmly at the small table, papers spread before him. But they weren't his papers. They were the pages torn from the tower's logbook, covered in his frantic handwriting. "They've been using these towers," he said without looking up. "They watch for people who won't be missed." Before I could ask what he meant, he showed us one of the original logbook entries, a ranger's note from 6 months ago about unusual activity in the area. Hikers gone missing, strange lights at night, and most disturbing, mentions of a group calling themselves the Watchers, who had been squatting in abandoned structures throughout the forest. The ranger had dismissed them as harmless drifters, but had noted their unsettling interest in the Lookout Tower program. As if on cue, the radio crackled to life. We expected the ranger's voice, but instead heard only breathing, then a voice too close to the microphone. "We see you up there. All 3 of you." The transmission ended with what sounded like laughter. Eli tried calling back to the ranger station, but got only static. When we looked out the windows, the fog had cleared enough to reveal something that turned my blood cold. Our car, still parked where we'd left it, but now surrounded by 5 other vehicles we'd never seen before. As daylight began to fade, we took inventory of our situation. The tower had become both refuge and trap, 4 stories up with only one way down. Darius had barricaded the door leading to the exterior staircase, using the small bed frame and anything else he could move. Eli tried the radio repeatedly, getting only static or, worse, brief moments of that same unsettling laughter. I kept watch at the windows, tracking the movement below. They weren't trying to hide anymore. I counted 7 people moving around our car and the other vehicles, men and women in mismatched clothing that seemed too heavy for the season. They worked with disturbing coordination, never speaking loud enough for us to hear, but clearly communicating somehow. One of them, a tall, gaunt man with a red bandana tied around his neck, kept looking up at our tower. Even from this distance, I could feel the intensity of his gaze. When he raised his hand in a casual salute, I ducked away from the window. "They're dismantling something from our car," I reported, forcing my voice to remain steady. Eli joined me at the window. We watched as 2 of them removed what looked like our spark plugs and battery. Any hope of driving away vanished. Darius had become eerily calm, methodically sorting through the emergency supplies we'd found in the tower. "Did you notice," he asked without looking up, "that none of the recent logbook entries mention leaving? People check in, but no one checks out." Around sunset, the first real terror began. They lit fires around the base of the tower, not campfires for warmth, but arranged in some kind of pattern. From above, I realized they formed a perfect pentagon with our tower at the center. The smoke rose in thin columns, too straight in the still evening air. And then they started chanting, low at first, then gradually increasing in volume. Not words I recognized, but rhythmic and deliberate. The radio crackled again. This time, a different voice. Female, unsettlingly cheerful. We're coming up now. To welcome you properly. The metal stairs began to ring with footsteps, slow and deliberate. We could hear them stopping at each landing, doing something we couldn't see. Darius frantically reinforced the door with anything he could find, while Eli searched desperately for a weapon. All we had were kitchen knives and a small hatchet from the emergency kit. A face appeared at the window, a young woman with tangled blonde hair and unnaturally pale skin. She smiled, revealing teeth filed to points. "Let us in," she said, her voice muffled through the glass. "We just want to talk." Behind her, others were climbing onto the observation deck that wrapped around the cabin. They carried crude weapons, machetes, crowbars, what looked like bone clubs. Some had symbols carved into their skin, fresh wounds still weeping. I recognized one of them with a shock that nearly stopped my heart. The man from the abandoned campsite, Thomas Wells from Chicago, his eyes now vacant and his movements jerky, puppet-like. He pressed something against the glass, his driver's license, the same one Eli had found in his wallet. The message was clear. He was one of them now. Soon, we would be too. They began testing the windows, looking for weaknesses. The glass was sturdy, designed to withstand storms, but it wasn't meant to resist determined human assault. The first crack appeared in the north-facing window, as one of them struck it repeatedly with what looked like a rock tied to a stick. Eli shouted in desperation, brandishing the hatchet, but they only laughed. They had all night. We had nowhere to go. Darius was frantically scanning the ranger's notes he'd found. "Listen," he said, his voice tight with controlled panic. The ranger suspected they were using the towers as some kind of ritual sites. Says here they're a cult that broke off from some rural church years ago. They believe these high points are gateways, that if they make the right sacrifices, they can. Jesus. He stopped reading, his face pale. They think they can open doors to somewhere else. And they need 3 people to do it. The window on the east side shattered first, sending glass shards skittering across the floor. Cold air rushed in as hands reached through the opening, groping blindly, tearing at the curtains. Eli swung the hatchet, connecting with something solid that produced a howl of pain and a momentary retreat. But we all knew it was temporary. They would be back, more cautious but equally determined. "The stairs," Darius suddenly said, gesturing toward the hatch in the floor I hadn't noticed before. "There's an interior stairwell for bad weather. It connects to a maintenance room at the base." He was already pulling up the concealed trapdoor, revealing a narrow metal ladder descending into darkness. "One at a time," he whispered urgently. "They don't know about this. It's not in any of the tourist information." I went first, climbing down the ladder into the suffocating blackness, my hands slick with sweat on the cold metal rungs. Above me, I heard Eli whispering frantically to Darius, something about not leaving anything useful. When my feet finally touched solid floor, I fumbled for my phone's flashlight. The small maintenance room was cramped and dusty, clearly unused for years. Metal shelving held ancient cans of paint and tools rusted beyond use. Eli came down next, moving faster than safety would dictate, nearly falling in his haste. He had a backpack clutched in one hand, our emergency supplies. "Where's Darius?" I whispered when he reached the bottom. Eli's face was a mask of conflicted emotions in the harsh light of my phone. "He's coming," he said, but something in his tone made my stomach drop. Above us, we heard the sound of furniture being dragged, Darius covering our escape route. We found the exterior door to the maintenance room easily enough, but it was secured with a padlock from the outside. "Darius has the key," Eli whispered, real fear in his voice now. He said he'd be right behind us. But both of us knew the truth as we heard the sounds of breaking glass and triumphant whoops from above. Darius had made his choice. He was buying us time, sacrificing himself. With no other options, we turned to the tiny window set high in the wall, barely large enough for a person to squeeze through, but our only chance. I boosted Eli up first. He struggled through the opening, his breath coming in panicked gasps, before finally tumbling to the ground outside. As I prepared to follow, The trapdoor above burst open. Faces peered down, illuminated demonically by firelight. They'd found us. What happened next exists in my memory as disconnected flashes. Eli reaching back through the window, screaming for me to hurry. The first cultist dropping into the maintenance room, moving with unnatural speed. The feeling of the windowsill cutting into my stomach as I fought to squeeze through. Hands grabbing at my legs, pulling me back. The sickening crunch as Eli smashed something against those reaching fingers. And finally, the sensation of falling forward into the night air, free but far from safe. We ran blindly into the forest, guided only by instinct and the need to put distance between ourselves and the tower. Behind us, inhuman screams echoed. Rage or ritual, I couldn't tell. The fires around the tower cast just enough light for us to avoid running straight into trees, but not enough to find a path. Our only strategy was to head downhill, hoping to reach the main road eventually. The sounds of pursuit were immediate and terrifying, crashing through underbrush, calls to one another that sounded more like animal signals than human communication. They knew these woods far better than we did. Several times we changed direction abruptly, wading through icy streams or doubling back briefly to confuse our trail. My lungs burned, legs trembling with exhaustion and fear, but the alternative to running was unthinkable. After what felt like hours, we stumbled onto a gravel road. Not the main access road we'd arrived on, but some kind of service path. In the distance, headlights appeared, moving slowly in our direction. Eli grabbed my arm, pulling me into the underbrush. "Could be them," he whispered. They had vehicles. We watched as an old pickup truck rumbled past, its bed filled with what looked like camping gear. When it was gone, we debated whether to follow the road or continue through the woods. The decision was made for us as flashlight beams appeared behind us, sweeping through the trees. Our pursuers had found our trail again. With no better option, we followed the road, staying just inside the tree line for quick concealment. The night seemed endless, each step a battle against exhaustion and creeping hopelessness. I couldn't stop thinking about Darius, about what they might be doing to him in that tower, about whether his sacrifice would ultimately mean anything. Dawn was breaking when we finally encountered another human being, an elderly man walking his dog along the forest edge where it met a small clearing. He looked startled to see two disheveled, wild-eyed men emerge from the trees, but something in our desperation must have communicated the genuineness of our danger. Without asking questions, he led us to his cabin a quarter-mile away and let us use his phone to call the sheriff. The next few hours passed in a blur of statements and questions. Deputies were dispatched to the lookout tower while we sat wrapped in blankets in the local sheriff's office, telling our story to increasingly skeptical faces. When the first reports came back from the scene, I understood their disbelief. The tower was empty. No sign of Darius. No evidence of broken windows or barricaded doors. Even our car was parked exactly where we'd left it. Keys in the ignition, engine starting on the first try. "Your friend probably headed back to the ranger station when you two got separated," the sheriff suggested, though his eyes said he thought we were either lying or hallucinating. "We'll put out a notice for him." But when they contacted the ranger station, another layer of impossibility emerged. Hank, the ranger who had given us the keys, had been on vacation for the past week. No one matching his description worked at the station. Eli and I were released with a warning about the dangers of drinking while camping and a suggestion to check local hospitals for our missing friend. As we drove away in my supposedly disabled car, now functioning perfectly, neither of us spoke. What could we say? The evidence of our own experiences stood in direct contradiction to physical reality. Had we somehow imagined the entire ordeal? Mass hallucination brought on by something in the water or food. 2 days later, back in Columbus, I received a package with no return address. Inside was the lookout tower's logbook, the actual one, not the pages Darius had shown us. Intact and complete with entries going back years. And there, on the final page, was a new entry in handwriting I recognized as Darius's. "They've accepted me as one of them now. The price was high, but the knowledge is worth it. The towers are indeed gateways. V and E escaped, but they'll be back. Everyone comes back eventually. We'll be watching." I tried contacting Eli immediately, but his phone had been disconnected. When I drove to his apartment, his landlord informed me he'd moved out suddenly, leaving no forwarding address. My attempts to file a missing persons report for Darius hit bureaucratic walls. Apparently, he didn't exist. No records of employment, no driver's license, no social security number. According to every database, there had never been a Darius Wright. Sometimes at night, I still hear the radio crackling with distant voices. I've thrown away 3 radios, but somehow, the voices always find me. They know I'm going to return to that tower someday, not because I want to, but because I have to. There are questions that demand answers, even at the cost of safety. And sometimes, when I look out my apartment window at night, I can see a figure watching from the rooftop across the street, tall and familiar, with something red tied around his neck. The strangest part? I received a postcard last week from Harrisburg, Illinois. The picture showed the Bald Knob Lookout Tower at sunset. The message, in unfamiliar handwriting, was simple. The view is better from up here. There's room for one more watcher. It was signed with 3 names, Hank, Thomas, and Darius. I've packed my car twice now, planning to drive back and confront whatever waits at that tower. Each time, something stops me, a noise, a shadow, a sudden chilling certainty that once I return, I'll never leave again. But I know I'll go back eventually. The tower is calling, and in my dreams, I'm already there, looking down from the windows at new visitors arriving far below, their faces turned up expectantly, unaware that they're being watched. Always watched. My name is Meredith Tanner, 41 years old, and I call Evanston, Illinois home. I work as a trauma nurse at Northwestern Memorial, a job that's shown me the worst humanity has to offer. After 15 years in the ER, I thought I was immune to horror, that nothing could shake me anymore. I was catastrophically wrong. The invitation came from my sister Imogen, who'd recently moved to southern Illinois with her husband Grant. "Come stay in a fire lookout tower for the weekend," she'd texted, along with pictures of a renovated structure in the Shawnee National Forest. Amazing views, total isolation. You need a break from all that death. The irony of her words haunts me now. I drove down on a Friday afternoon in late September, the kind of perfect autumn day that feels like a gift. The 5-hour drive from Evanston to Shawnee was peaceful, the radio playing soft jazz as farmland gave way to increasingly dense forest. I'd been skeptical about this trip. Towers weren't exactly my idea of comfortable accommodation, but as I wound through the hills near Makanda, something about the landscape began to calm the perpetual anxiety that had become my baseline state. The ranger station was closing when I arrived. A young woman named Petra was locking up, looking anxious to leave. When I mentioned I was heading to the Bellsmith Springs Lookout Tower, her hand froze on the key. "That one?" she asked, a slight tremor in her voice. "Not Bald Knob or Williams Hill." When I confirmed, she reluctantly handed me a map and a set of keys, along with a form to sign. I noticed her eyes kept darting to the darkening forest beyond the parking lot. "Something wrong with Bellsmith?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She shook her head too quickly. "Just an older tower, less renovated than the others." She hesitated. "There's a logbook up there. Make sure you count correctly." Before I could ask what she meant, she was in her truck, gravel spraying as she pulled away. I shrugged it off as small-town weirdness and followed the directions to the tower. The last mile was on an overgrown fire road, my sedan scraping against encroaching brush. The tower appeared suddenly as I rounded a bend, stark and angular against the dimming sky, rising above the tree line like a sentinel. 4 stories tall with a glass-walled cabin on top and an exterior staircase spiraling upward. Imogen and Grant's blue Jeep was already parked at the base, but there was no sign of them outside. The climb up those metal stairs was disorienting, each step ringing hollowly, the height making my stomach lurch despite my usual comfort with heights. At the 3rd landing, I noticed something odd, small markings scratched into the metal railing. Numbers, it seemed, though some looked more like tallies. By the time I reached the cabin door, the sun had dipped below the horizon, bathing everything in deep twilight. The cabin was empty. No Imogen, no Grant. Just a neatly made bed, a small kitchen area, and windows on all sides offering panoramic views of absolutely nothing but darkness. Their bags were there, clothes partially unpacked, Imogen's favorite coffee mug on the counter, Grant's hiking boots by the door. A half-prepared meal sat on the cutting board, vegetables chopped, pasta box open, pot filled with water. It looked like they'd stepped away momentarily, perhaps to enjoy the sunset from the exterior deck. I called their names, my voice sounding small in the vastness of the forest below. No response. The silence that followed was absolute. No birds, no insects, not even the whisper of wind through trees. Just dead, waiting silence. On the small desk beneath the north-facing window, I found the logbook Petra had mentioned. Its cover was weathered leather, the pages inside yellowed with age. The most recent entry was dated that morning, in Imogen's familiar handwriting. Arrived safely. Tower secure. Count is 27. Night fell completely as I tried calling Imogen's cell. No service, as expected. The tower had a radio for emergencies, but it seemed dramatic to call in a search party when they'd likely just gone for an evening hike. Still, something felt wrong. I know how people leave spaces when they're coming right back. This didn't feel like that. The vegetables were starting to brown at the edges. The water in the pot was room temperature. They'd been gone for hours, not minutes. I unpacked my things, made myself a simple dinner from their supplies, and waited. By midnight, my concern had morphed into genuine worry. I'd checked every inch of the small cabin, finding nothing unusual except for that logbook. I read through recent entries, mostly weekend visitors remarking on the views or wildlife sightings. But each entry ended with that same strange phrase. Count is number. The numbers varied, sometimes increasing by 1 or 2, occasionally decreasing. Imogen's 27 was the highest I'd seen. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by the tower's creaking in the wind and my own anxiety. Around 3 a.m., I woke suddenly, certain I'd heard footsteps on the metal stairs. I lay frozen, listening intently. Nothing. Then, a distinct metallic tap from below. Someone was climbing the tower. Relief flooded through me. Imogen and Grant returning from wherever they'd been. I switched on the light and opened the door, ready to berate them for scaring me. The staircase was empty. The sound continued though, tap, 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 now moving around the exterior deck that encircled the cabin. I slammed the door shut, heart hammering. The tapping continued, circling the cabin completely before stopping directly outside the east window. I approached cautiously, straining to see through my own reflection in the dark glass. Nothing visible but the night and distant treetops. Morning came with unsettling clarity. Brilliant sunshine, revealing miles of unbroken forest canopy in every direction. No sign of human presence anywhere. I made coffee with shaking hands and tried the radio. It worked, but the ranger who responded sounded confused when I mentioned Imogen and Grant. "No one checked in for Belle Smith besides you, ma'am," he said, voice crackling through static. "Our records show you're the first visitor in weeks." I explained about the jeep, the luggage, the half-prepared meal. He promised to send someone out to check. It would take a few hours given the tower's remote location. As I waited, I decided to search outside. The exterior deck revealed nothing unusual, but as I descended the metal staircase, I noticed those scratched numbers again, clearer in daylight. They weren't random tallies but precise counts, one per step, starting from the top. 1, 2, 3, and so on. At the base of the tower, Imogen's Jeep stood exactly as before. The keys were still in the ignition. Their phones were inside, both dead. A trail led from the parking area into the forest, well-maintained at first, but quickly becoming overgrown. I followed it for 20 minutes before reaching a small clearing. In the center stood a weathered stone marker, its inscription worn but still legible. Belle Smith Springs Fire Tower, EST 1934. Remember the count. The clearing felt wrong somehow. Too perfectly circular, the trees around its perimeter too evenly spaced. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A flash of blue fabric caught on a branch. Imogen's scarf. It had been her favorite, a gift from our mother. I grabbed it, calling their names loudly enough to startle birds from nearby trees. The forest swallowed my voice without an echo. Heading back, I felt watched, that distinct sensation of eyes tracking my movement. Twice I spun around, certain I'd catch someone ducking behind a tree. Nothing, but the feeling persisted, growing stronger as I neared the tower. When I finally reached the clearing where it stood, I stopped cold. Something had changed. The door at the base of the tower was open now, swinging gently though there was no breeze. I approached cautiously, knowing I'd closed it firmly behind me. Inside the ground floor storage room, Equipment had been moved, tools rearranged, supplies shifted. Nothing seemed missing, just handled, touched. The sense of invasion was overwhelming. Someone had been here while I was gone. Possibly the same someone who'd been circling the cabin in the night. The climb back up felt interminable, each step heavier than the last. At the cabin, everything appeared untouched, except the logbook. It lay open on the desk where I hadn't left it. A new entry had been added below Imogen's in handwriting I didn't recognize. Count is now 28. The ranger arrived mid-afternoon, a tall man named Curtis with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much. He examined the jeep, the campsite, the half-prepared meal that I'd now moved to the small refrigerator. His expression remained neutral, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "You say your sister and her husband were here?" he asked, examining the luggage. "When's the last time you actually saw them in person?" The question felt like a trap. 3 months ago, at her birthday. We've texted since then. She invited me here. Even as I said it, I realized how it sounded, how easily this could be dismissed as a lonely woman's delusion. But the Jeep was real. The luggage was real. The vegetables were real, damn it. Curtis radioed his findings, speaking in a coded shorthand I couldn't follow. After a brief conversation, he turned to me with practiced calm. "I'm going to check the trails. Would you mind waiting here? Sometimes hikers get turned around, lose track of time." After he left, I returned to the logbook, examining it more carefully. The entries went back decades, some so faded they were barely legible. I noticed a pattern. The count generally increased by 1 whenever new visitors arrived. Occasionally it decreased, usually when people departed, but not always. Sometimes the number jumped by 2 or 3 without explanation. As I flipped through the pages, a loose photograph fell out, yellowed with age, its edges curling. It showed a group of men standing before the tower, dated 1956. 7 men in Forest Service uniforms, smiling stiffly at the camera. Nothing unusual, except for the man on the far right. His face was blurred, not by motion or poor focus, but as if it had been deliberately smudged away. Scrawled across the bottom, "Remember to count before dark. Count is 7. The radio crackled, startling me. Curtis's voice came through, strained and staticky. "Miss Tanner? I found something. A sight in the woods. I'm heading back now." Something in his tone raised gooseflesh on my arms. I asked what he'd found, but the radio just hissed with static. Through the south-facing window, I could see storm clouds gathering on the horizon, dark and threatening. As dusk approached, the temperature dropped precipitously. I built a fire in the small wood stove, watching the clearing below for Curtis's return. The forest had gone eerily silent. No birdsong, no rustling leaves, just absolute stillness. The storm wasn't moving, just hanging there on the horizon like a threat. When I checked the radio again, I got nothing but static, not even when I tried different channels. Night fell rapidly, darkness swallowing the forest. No sign of Curtis. I secured the door, checking it twice, and pulled the curtains closed on all windows except the north-facing one, where I kept watch. The fire cast flickering shadows across the cabin walls, shadows that sometimes seemed to move independently of the flames. I tried to focus on practical matters. If Curtis didn't return by morning, I would hike out to the ranger station myself. The tapping started again at midnight. That same metallic sound from the night before, moving methodically up the stairs. I had barricaded the door with the small table and chairs, but the sound bypassed the door entirely, moving directly to the windows. Tap, tap, tap around the perimeter of the cabin. I sat motionless in the center of the room, a kitchen knife clutched in one hand, watching the curtains for any sign of movement. The tapping stopped directly in front of the north window, the only one without a curtain. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, deliberately, a hand pressed against the glass. Pale and waxy in the moonlight, the fingers unnaturally long. Not a human hand. I couldn't scream, couldn't move, could only stare as a face rose behind it. A face with proportions all wrong, with eyes too large and a mouth that stretched impossibly wide. It saw me watching. Its mouth opened in what might have been a smile, revealing teeth like needles. Tap, 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 its finger against the glass, more insistent now. Not trying to break in, I realized with dawning horror. Counting. It was counting the windows, the walls, the dimensions of my prison. Counting me. When it finally retreated, disappearing into the darkness beyond the glass. I collapsed to the floor, shaking uncontrollably. The logbook lay open nearby, that last entry taunting me. Count is now 28. With trembling fingers, I counted the stairs from my memory, 24 steps to the top. Plus me, Imogen, Grant, and Curtis. 28 exactly. At dawn, I was still awake, the knife still in my hand. The storm had moved closer, thunder rumbling in the distance. I uncovered the windows cautiously, half expecting to see that face pressed against the glass in daylight. Instead, I saw Curtis's truck still parked below, no sign of the man himself. And something else, something that hadn't been there before. A circle of stones on the ground around the base of the tower, each stone precisely placed. I was gathering my courage to go downstairs when a movement caught my eye, someone emerging from the tree line. Relief flooded through me until I realized it wasn't Curtis. It was Imogen. My sister walked with strange stiffness, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. She looked up at the tower, her face expressionless, and raised her hand in a gesture that wasn't quite a wave. Behind her, more figures appeared at the forest edge, Grant, and others I didn't recognize, all moving with that same unnatural gait, all looking up at me. They didn't attempt to climb the tower, just stood in that loose circle, watching. 7 of them in total, Imogen, Grant, Curtis, and 4 strangers. None speaking, none moving beyond the occasional head tilt or arm raise. After an hour of this silent standoff, they retreated into the forest as one, disappearing between the trees without a backward glance. I used their absence to think, to plan. The tower phone remained dead, the radio broadcasting only static. My car keys were in my pocket, but the thought of descending those stairs, of being exposed and vulnerable on the ground, was paralyzing. Yet staying meant certain death. I had limited food and water, and whatever was happening here was escalating. The logbook became my focus. If this had happened before, perhaps someone had left information, a clue to survival. I read every entry meticulously, finding patterns. Missing hikers, strange sounds at night, and always the count. I came to understand its significance. It wasn't just counting people. It was counting presences. And when the count changed without people arriving or departing, it meant something had crossed over, something that wore human faces but wasn't human at all. The storm finally broke mid-afternoon, violent wind and rain lashing against the windows. Through the deluge, I noticed movement again, those 7 figures returning, now standing in the downpour, faces upturned to my windows. Lightning illuminated them in strobing flashes, and each time, they were closer to the tower. Not walking, not moving between flashes, just closer, as if the distance between us was collapsing. I gathered essential supplies in my backpack, food, water, first aid kit, flashlight. The radio too, though it was useless now. I took the logbook as well, evidence of whatever nightmare this was. As I prepared, I kept checking the windows. Flash, they were at the edge of the clearing. Flash, halfway to the tower. Flash, at the base of the stairs. Flash, on the first landing. They were climbing now, their movements synchronous and fluid, unlike the jerky gait from before. I could see their faces clearly through the rain-streaked glass, familiar features rendered strange by whatever force now animated them. Imogen's eyes, once warm brown, now reflected light like a nocturnal animal's. Grant's perpetual smile was gone, replaced by a blank mask. Curtis moved as if his joints bent in additional places. I had one chance, the maintenance shaft. I'd found its hatch while searching the cabin, a narrow passage with a ladder descending through the center of the tower. It would bypass the exterior stairs entirely, letting me out through a door in the base. If I could reach my car before they realized what I'd done. The hatch was designed as an emergency exit, not easily visible unless you knew to look for it. I slid the small bookcase aside and pulled up the trapdoor. Below, darkness yawned. The flashlight revealed metal rungs descending into shadow. Behind me, footsteps reached the top landing, the slow, deliberate tread of things that had all night to wait. A hand tested the door, finding it locked. I lowered myself into the shaft, pulling the hatch closed above me. The darkness was absolute save for my flashlight beam. The climb down was agonizing, each metal rung slick with condensation, the walls close enough to induce claustrophobia. Above me, I heard the cabin door splinter as something forced its way in. They would find the hatch soon enough. Halfway down, disaster. My foot slipped, sending the flashlight clattering into the darkness below. I clung to the ladder in perfect blackness, fighting panic. From above came the sound of furniture being moved, the hatch being discovered. From below, nothing but silence where my flashlight should have landed with a clatter. It was as if the bottom of the shaft had simply ceased to exist. I continued downward by feel, counting rungs obsessively. 17, 18, 19. There should be 24, matching the exterior stairs. At 23, my foot met emptiness where the final rung should be. I reached down, feeling nothing but open air. I was suspended above what? The ground floor should be just below. Why couldn't I feel it? Something scraped against metal above. They'd opened the hatch. Soft thuds indicated they were entering the shaft. No choice now. I let go, dropping into darkness. The fall was both longer and shorter than it should have been. A sickening moment of vertigo before I hit solid ground, pain lancing through my ankle. Disoriented, I fumbled in the dark, hands finding a wall, then a door handle. The door opened not to the tower's ground floor, but directly outside. Impossible given the tower's architecture. I emerged into driving rain, the storm reaching its peak. Lightning revealed I was on the opposite side of the tower from where my car was parked. I would have to circle around, exposed and visible. Behind me, shapes moved in the open doorway, silhouettes wrong in ways I couldn't articulate. I ran, ankles screaming in protest, through mud that seemed to grab at my feet. The tower loomed to my right, and beyond it should be the clearing where our vehicles waited. But something was wrong. The tower kept staying to my right, no matter how long I ran. I was circling it without getting any closer to the parking area. Spatial logic had abandoned this place entirely. Lightning flashed again, and I saw them. All 7, spread out in a loose semicircle, cutting off my path to the vehicles. They weren't pursuing, just herding, driving me back toward the forest. Toward that clearing with the stone marker. Understanding hit like physical pain. They didn't want me to leave. They wanted me to join the count. With no other option, I plunged into the trees, away from both tower and followers. The forest was a maze in the storm, visibility reduced to mere feet. I used the lightning flashes for orientation, trying to maintain a straight line away from the tower. Each time the forest lit up, I caught glimpses of movement among the trees, figures paralleling my course, never approaching but never falling behind. I don't know how long I ran. Time seemed as warped as space in that storm-lashed forest. Eventually, I broke through underbrush onto an actual road, gravel, single lane, but gloriously human and real. In the distance, headlights approached, a vehicle moving slowly in the downpour. I waved frantically, prepared to throw myself in front of it if necessary. The truck stopped, an elderly man peering at me through the rain-streaked windshield, his face a study in concern. "Lord Almighty, what happened to you?" he asked as I climbed into the passenger seat, soaking his upholstery. I couldn't form coherent sentences, just repeated "drive," until he put the truck in gear. As we pulled away, I looked back through the rear window. 7 figures stood in the road behind us, watching the truck recede into the storm. Imogen raised her hand in that not-quite wave again. Then darkness swallowed them. The old man, Harold was his name, took me to the nearest hospital in Carbondale. My ankle was severely sprained, and I was suffering from exposure and exhaustion. The doctors were more concerned about my mental state, my rambling about the tower, about my sister and her husband, about things that counted in the night. They sedated me, and I slept for nearly 20 hours. When I woke, 2 sheriff's deputies were waiting to interview me. They'd been to the tower, they explained. Found nothing unusual. No sign of Imogen or Grant. No jeep. No luggage. No circle of stones. The ranger named Curtis didn't exist in their employee records. The tower itself was secured and locked, showing no signs of forced entry or disturbance. The old Bellsmith Tower hasn't been used as a rental for years, the older deputy explained gently. It's scheduled for demolition next month. No one stayed there since a structural issue was found last spring. I insisted on showing them the logbook, the photograph, evidence that I wasn't delusional. But my backpack contained only my own belongings. The logbook was gone, if it had ever existed outside my mind. The deputies exchanged the kind of glances reserved for the mentally unwell. They had questions about my sister, her full name, her husband's details, their address in southern Illinois. As I provided information, Their expressions grew increasingly troubled. "Ms. Tanner," the younger deputy finally said, "we don't show any record of an Imogen Tanner or Grant Wilcox living in this region. Are you certain they moved here?" I was released the next day into the custody of my ex-husband, who'd driven down from Chicago. Mark had always been kind, even after our divorce, and he didn't question my story or try to rationalize it away. He simply took me home to Evanston, made sure I had food and medication, and promised to help me find Imogen. But there was nothing to find. Her social media accounts had vanished. Her phone number no longer existed. When I contacted our cousins, our old school friends, they remembered me, but gave blank responses about Imogen. "Meredith, you're an only child," our aunt said gently. "You've never had a sister." I might have believed I was losing my mind if not for one thing: the scarf. Blue silk with hand-embroidered edges, Imogen's favorite. It was still in my jacket pocket when I returned to Evanston. Proof she existed, that she was real. I clutched it at night like a talisman. 3 weeks after my return, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a single page torn from what I recognized as the tower logbook. My own entry, in handwriting I didn't remember writing, found the truth about Belle Smith. The counting has gone on for decades. They need exactly 32 to complete the circle. Count is now 29. Below it, in different handwriting, "We're saving a place for you, Meredith." Count is now 30. That night, I woke to tapping on my bedroom window. Tap, tap, tap. A counting rhythm. When I gathered my courage to look, Imogen stood outside, though my apartment was on the 3rd floor. Her face was pressed against the glass, that too wide smile stretching her features. Behind her stood Grant and Curtis and the others. All watching, all counting. I've moved 3 times since then. I've changed my name, my appearance, my entire life. But they always find me. The tapping always returns, sometimes at windows, sometimes on walls, sometimes inside my own head. Always counting, adding up to that final number, 32. Last week, I made a terrible discovery. I was looking through old family photos, searching for Imogen's face, for proof to show my therapist, when I found a childhood picture I didn't remember. Me at about 8 years old, standing with our parents at a national park. Except I wasn't alone. A little girl stood beside me, her face blurred in exactly the same way as the man in that 1956 photograph. On the back, my mother's handwriting. Meredith, age 8. Family vacation. Just my name. No mention of a sister. I've started to wonder if Imogen ever existed at all. If maybe she was always one of them, planted in my memories, grooming me for the count. The most terrifying possibility isn't that I lost my sister to whatever lives in that tower. It's that I never had a sister at all, that my entire history has been manipulated to lead me to Belle Smith Springs. The tapping started again tonight, gentle at first, then more insistent. Tap, tap, tap. It's coming from inside my closet now. I know what I'll find if I open the door. A metal staircase ascending into darkness. The Belle Smith Tower, somehow connected to my apartment 50 miles away. They've bent space once already. Why not again? I won't open it. I won't answer the tapping. But sometimes, in my weaker moments, I wonder if joining the count would be so terrible. To be part of something ancient and patient, something that has waited decades to reach its perfect number. To see Imogen again, even if she never really was my sister. The tapping has stopped now. Instead, I hear a voice, soft and familiar, calling my name. And underneath it, a sound like radio static, counting steadily upward. I'm Gideon Warwick, 34 years old, and I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My life's been a quiet grind. Warehouse job, small apartment, the usual. But I've always had this itch for solitude, so when I heard about renting fire lookout towers for camping, I jumped at it. Shawnee National Forest in Illinois seemed perfect, a tower called Pine Ridge, perched high above endless trees. Just me, my beat-up Jeep, and a week to unplug. I packed light, canned food, a sleeping bag, some books. The drive down was long, radio fading to static as I hit the back roads. Something about those winding paths felt off. Like the forest was watching. I laughed it away, city nerves, right? The tower came into view at dusk, a spindly metal skeleton stabbing the sky. 80 feet up, a square cabin with windows on all sides. It looked lonely, but that's what I wanted. I met the ranger, Amos Tate, at the base. He was grizzled, maybe 60, with a handshake like a vice. "No fires up there," he grunted, eyeing my Jeep like it was a stray dog. He handed me the key and left without another word. Weird guy, but I figured he'd seen too many tourists. I slung my pack over my shoulder and started climbing the stairs, each step creaking louder than the last. Up top, the cabin was bare, wooden floor, a cot, a desk, and a dusty radio. The windows gave a 360-degree view of the forest, black waves of trees stretching forever. I felt like a king in a horror movie, lording over some cursed kingdom. My phone had no signal, which was the point, but it still made my stomach twist. I unpacked, ate some cold beans, and tried to settle in. The silence was thick, broken only by the wind rattling the glass. I told myself it was peaceful, but it didn't feel that way. I'd read about lookouts online, how they're built to spot fires, not for comfort. This one had history, built in the 30s, manned for decades. I imagined some old-timer up here, chain-smoking and staring at the dark. Kinda cool, but creepy too. I flipped through a book, but my eyes kept drifting to the windows. Nothing out there but trees, yet I couldn't shake the feeling something was staring back. I chalked it up to being alone. Solitude messes with you, right? Like when you're home and swear you hear a floorboard creak. Night fell hard. No stars, just inky black. I lit a lantern, its glow bouncing off the glass. The cabin felt smaller, like the walls were inching closer. I tried the radio, static, then a faint voice, gone before I could catch it. Probably my imagination. I crawled into my sleeping bag, the cot creaking under me. The wind picked up, whistling through the tower's frame. It sounded wrong, almost human. I told myself it was nothing, but my heart was thumping. Sleep wasn't coming easy. I thought about why I was here. Milwaukee's noise, horns, neighbors, my boss yelling, had worn me down. I wanted quiet, but this was something else. It was like the forest had its own pulse, slow and heavy. I'd seen pictures of lookouts online, all cozy with coffee mugs and sunsets. This wasn't that. The tower felt alive, and not in a good way. I laughed at myself. "Gideon, you're losing it already." But the laugh sounded hollow. I got up to check the windows, just to prove I wasn't spooked. The forest was a void, swallowing my lantern's light. I scanned the trees, half expecting a deer or something to break the tension. Nothing. Then I noticed the stairs, those rickety steps I'd climbed. They were empty, but I couldn't stop staring. Something about them felt inviting, like they wanted me to go down. I shook it off and sat back down, but my hands were clammy. I pulled out a notebook to jot down my thoughts, something to ground me. Day 1. Creepy tower, creepy forest. I smirked, but it didn't help. The wind howled again, and this time, I swore I heard a word in it, my name. I froze, straining to listen. Just wind, I told myself. But I didn't believe it. I lay back down, eyes wide, watching the ceiling. The night stretched on, heavy and disturbing. Morning couldn't come fast enough, but the dark wasn't done with me yet. I kept my eyes on the windows, waiting for something to move. The tower groaned, metal shifting in the cold. It was just a building, just a camping trip. So why did it feel like I'd walked into something I wasn't supposed to? Dawn broke gray and sluggish, the forest still cloaked in mist. I barely slept, my eyes burning from watching the windows all night. I rolled off the cot, joints stiff, and checked my supplies. That's when I noticed my water jug had a crack, leaking a puddle on the floor. Great start. I mopped it up with a spare shirt, cursing under my breath. Only enough water for a couple days now. I could drive to town, but the Jeep's gas was low, and the nearest station was miles away. City boy mistake number 1. I climbed down to check the Jeep, the stairs wobbling under me. The forest was quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. My Jeep looked fine, but the driver's side window had a weird smudge, like a handprint, only bigger. I wiped it off, telling myself it was mud. Probably was. Still, it left me uneasy, like I'd caught someone peeking. I popped the hood, pretending I knew what I was looking at. Gas was lower than I thought. Half a tank, maybe. I kicked a tire, frustrated. Should have filled up before I got here. Back in the tower, I tried the radio again. Static, then a burst of garbled words, "Stay inside," before it died. My stomach twisted. Could have been a ranger, could have been nothing. I shook it off and made coffee on my camp stove, the hiss of the flame oddly comforting. But the cabin felt wrong, like it was watching me fumble through my morning. I spilled coffee on my hand, yelping like an idiot. The burn wasn't bad, but it set the tone, clumsy and on edge. I decided to explore the area, clear my head. Grabbing my backpack, I headed down again, locking the tower behind me. The trail near the base was overgrown, barely a path. I pushed through, branches snagging my jacket. About a mile in, I found a rusted sign. Pine Ridge Lookout, EST 1934. Cool, but the air felt heavy, like I'd wandered somewhere I shouldn't. I kept going, figuring I'd find a stream to refill my water. Bad call, city boy mistake number 2. The forest seemed to shift around me, trees closing in. I tripped over a root, scraping my knee through my jeans. Blood soaked the fabric, stinging like hell. I sat there, catching my breath, when I saw it, a boot print in the mud, fresh, way bigger than mine. My heart skipped. Could have been Amos, the ranger, right? But he hadn't mentioned patrolling. I stood, scanning the trees. Nothing moved, but the quiet felt horror movie wrong, like I was being sized up. I hustled back to the tower, my knee throbbing. Climbing the stairs, I kept glancing over my shoulder. The handprint on the Jeep, the boot print, the radio, it was piling up, each one small but disturbing. I locked myself in the cabin, double-checking the door. My water was still low, and now I was spooked. I could leave, but the idea of driving through those woods at night? No thanks. I'd stick it out, ration what I had. Solid plan, Gideon. Or not. Sitting at the desk, I pulled out my notebook, scribbling what I'd seen. Writing it down made it real, which wasn't as comforting as I'd hoped. I glanced at the windows, the mist thicker now, curling like fingers around the tower. I told myself I was overreacting, like when you're home alone and every creak's a burglar. But this wasn't Milwaukee. This was me, alone, in a place that felt alive in all the wrong ways. I tried reading to distract myself, but the words blurred. My mind kept circling back to that boot print. Too big, too fresh. I checked the door again, then the windows, my reflection pale and twitchy. The forest was still, but I couldn't shake the feeling I'd brought something back with me from that trail. Something that knew I was up here, alone. As evening crept in, the tower groaned, metals settling in the cold. I lit my lantern, the glow sharp against the dark. I told myself I'd be fine. Just a few days, then back to civilization. But deep down, I knew something was off. The kind of off that makes your skin crawl, like you've stepped into a scary story you can't close. Darkness swallowed the tower, my lantern barely holding it back. I sat on the cot, clutching a lukewarm coffee, when the radio crackled, clear this time. You shouldn't be here. A man's voice, low and rough, then static. My heart slammed. I spun the dial, desperate for more, but it was dead again. No way that was Amos. I checked the door, locked tight, but my hands shook. This wasn't just a creepy vibe anymore. It was horror movie real, and I was the idiot who didn't leave. I paced the cabin, all 12 feet of it, trying to think. Could be a prank, right? Kids messing with old frequencies. But out here, miles from nowhere. I grabbed my flashlight and scanned the windows. The forest was a black wall, my beam useless against it. Then I saw something, movement at the base of the stairs. A shape, too tall, too still. I froze, breath caught, waiting for it to move again. Nothing. Maybe a deer. But deer don't stand like that, do they? I killed the lantern, plunging the cabin into dark. If someone was out there, I didn't want them seeing me. My eyes adjusted, catching faint outlines of the trees. I crouched by the window, flashlight off, straining to see. Minutes dragged, my knees aching. Then, a creak on the stairs. Slow, deliberate, like someone testing each step. My pulse roared. I gripped the desk, my only weapon a lousy pen. City boy mistake number 3. No knife, no gun, just vibes. The creaking stopped halfway up. Silence pressed in, heavy and disturbing. I held my breath, praying they'd leave. Then a thud, something heavy hitting the platform below the cabin. Not an animal. Animals don't carry things. I bit my lip, tasting blood, and crawled to the door. The lock felt flimsy now, a joke against whatever was out there. I wanted to yell, scare them off, but my voice was gone, stuck in my throat like a bad dream. I thought about home, Milwaukee streetlights, my noisy neighbors. I'd give anything for that now. Another thud, closer, right under the floor. My mind flashed to news stories. Missing hikers, never found. Was this how it started? I shook my head, trying to focus. I needed a plan. but all I had was panic. I grabbed my backpack, stuffing in essentials, water, food, keys. If I had to run, I'd be ready. Run where, though? The Jeep was down there, with whatever this was. A scrape against the cabin wall made me jump. Slow, like nails on wood, circling the tower. I tracked it, heart pounding, as it moved from one side to the other. Human. Had to be, but why? Robbery? Revenge? My mind spun. Maybe I'd pissed off Amos, or some local I didn't know about. But this felt bigger, scarier, like the forest itself was in on it. The scraping stopped, and I waited, every muscle screaming. Then a laugh, low, guttural, right outside the door. I stumbled back, tripping over the cot. My flashlight rolled, beam spinning wild across the ceiling. I scrambled for it, clicking it off, plunging us back into black. Us, me and whoever, whatever, was out there. I crouched low, listening. No more laughs, no more steps, just my ragged breathing. I told myself they were gone, but I knew better. Something was wrong, dead wrong, and I'd ignored every sign. The handprint, the boot, the radio. I crawled to the desk, pulling out my notebook like it could save me. I scribbled what I'd heard, my handwriting a mess. It was proof, something to show who. Nobody was coming. I was alone, and this tower wasn't a lookout anymore. It was a trap. I checked my phone, still no signal, battery half dead. Useless. I thought about breaking a window, shouting for help. But who'd hear? The forest didn't care. As I sat there, hugging my knees, a new sound started, soft, rhythmic, like tapping. Not on the door, not on the walls, but above me, on the roof. My eyes shot up, tracing the ceiling. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, like someone was playing with me. I gripped my flashlight, knuckles white, knowing I couldn't stay still much longer. This was real, this was horror, and it wasn't stopping. The tapping on the roof stopped, but my heart didn't. I grabbed my backpack, hands shaking, and crept to the door. The silence outside was worse than the noises, too still, like a predator holding its breath. I unlocked the door, wincing at the click, and peered down the stairs. My Jeep glinted below, my only shot. I took a step, the metal groaning under me. Every creak felt like a scream, but I kept going, flashlight off, praying the dark hid me. The forest loomed, a horror show waiting to pounce. Halfway down, I heard it, a low hum, human but wrong, coming from the trees. I froze, one hand on the railing, my pulse deafening. It wasn't singing, more like a chant, rising and falling. I pictured cult stuff from true crime shows, people in robes, crazy eyes. Was that what this was? I shook it off and kept moving, step by step, the Jeep closer now. My knee throbbed from yesterday's fall, but adrenaline numbed it. I hit the ground, gravel crunching, and sprinted to the driver's door. I fumbled the keys, dropping them in the dirt. Classic Gideon move, screw up when it matters. I snatched them up, glancing back at the tower. A shadow moved at the top, just inside the cabin. My stomach dropped. Someone was up there, where I'd been seconds ago. I yanked the door open, threw my pack in, and slid behind the wheel. The Jeep roared to life, headlights slicing the dark. I peeled out, tires spitting gravel, the tower shrinking in my rear view. I was out, but not safe. The dirt road twisted through the forest, branches scraping the Jeep like claws. The hum followed, louder now, echoing from all sides. I floored it, the speedometer climbing, but the road was a nightmare, ruts and rocks shaking the frame. My headlights caught something, a figure, tall and thin, standing dead center. I swerved, missing it by inches, the Jeep fishtailing. My breath hitched. Human, definitely, but the way it stood, too still, too wrong. I didn't look back. I gripped the wheel, knuckles white, telling myself I'd hit pavement soon. Then the engine sputtered. No. The gas gauge read empty. How? I'd had half a tank yesterday. Panic clawed my chest. I coasted, praying for a miracle, but the Jeep slowed, then stopped. Silence rushed in, thick and scary. The hum was gone, but that didn't comfort me. I locked the doors, my flashlight beam darting outside. Trees pressed close, their shadows twisting into faces. I was stranded, miles from help. I checked my phone. Dead now, not even a flicker. I rummaged through my pack, finding a half-empty water bottle and a granola bar. Survival skills? Zero. I'd watched Bear Grylls once, but that didn't help now. Something tapped the rear window, sharp and deliberate. I spun, beam shaking, but saw nothing. My mind screamed run, but where? The forest was theirs, whoever they were. I clutched the keys, ready to fight if it came to that. The tapping spread, side windows, roof, like rain but heavier. I crouched low, heart hammering, picturing hands all over the Jeep. I whispered to myself, "You're fine, Gideon," but it was a lie. A face pressed against the passenger window, pale, eyes too big, gone in a blink. I yelped, dropping the flashlight. This wasn't a prank or a ranger. This was horror, life or death, and I was losing. I had to move, but my body wouldn't listen. I forced myself to think. The map in my pack showed a ranger station, maybe 10 miles west. If I could walk, hide in the trees, I might make it. The tapping stopped, daring me to try. I grabbed my pack, took a breath, and unlocked the door. The air outside was cold, thick with pine and something sour, like rot. I stepped out, legs wobbly, and bolted for the trees, leaving the Jeep behind. Every step felt like a gamble, the dark closing in. I ducked behind a trunk, catching my breath, listening. No hum, no taps, just my pulse. I moved again, keeping low, branches snagging my clothes. The forest was alive, watching, but I pushed forward, driven by fear. I didn't see the rope until it caught my ankle, yanking me down hard. My chin hit dirt, pain exploding. I clawed at it, heart screaming, as footsteps crunched closer, slow and sure. I wasn't alone anymore. I thrashed against the rope, my ankle burning, dirt in my mouth. The footsteps stopped, close enough to feel their weight in the air. I froze, playing dead, hoping they'd pass. A flashlight beam swept over me, slow, like they were savoring it. I held my breath, my mind racing back to Milwaukee, my couch, my coffee pot, safety I'd never see again. The beam lingered, then clicked off. Silence, but I knew they were still there, waiting. I reached for the rope, fingers trembling, trying to loosen it. My knife was back in the Jeep, another dumb move. The knot was tight, professional, like something a hunter would tie. I pictured Amos, his cold eyes, but this felt bigger, more organized. A twig snapped behind me, deliberate. I worked faster, nails splitting, the rope finally giving. I rolled free, scrambling to my knees, but a hand grabbed my collar, yanking me back. I swung wild, hitting nothing but air. The hand let go, and I stumbled forward, crashing through branches. Laughter followed, multiple voices, low and cruel, echoing around me. I ran, no direction, just away. My lungs burned, legs heavy, but stopping wasn't an option. I tripped again, this time on a root, sprawling face first into mud. My flashlight was gone, lost in the fall. I groped in the dark, finding a rock, better than nothing. The laughter stopped, replaced by whispers, too close, circling me like wolves. I crouched, rock in hand, eyes darting. Shapes moved in the dark, 3, maybe 4, tall and lean, slipping between trees. They weren't rushing, like they knew I had nowhere to go. I thought of horror stories, cults in the woods, sacrificing idiots like me. Was that it? I whispered, "Please, I'll leave." But my voice cracked, pathetic. A figure stepped closer, just a silhouette, holding something long. A stick, a blade? My grip tightened on the rock, ready to fight. I threw the rock, heard a grunt, and bolted again. Branches tore at my face, blood mixing with sweat. I was slowing, my body giving out. Ahead, a light flickered. Could be the ranger station, could be a trick. I didn't care, it was my only shot. The whispers grew louder, words I couldn't catch, like a chant again. I pushed harder, legs screaming, until I broke into a clearing. A cabin stood there, windows dark, no ranger in sight. My heart sank. This wasn't rescue. I pounded on the door anyway, shouting, "Help, please." No answer. The whispers closed in, now behind me. I kicked the door, with splintering, and stumbled inside. The air was stale, heavy with dust. I barred the door with a chair, hands shaking so bad I dropped my pack. Something heavy hit the door, once, twice. I backed away, scanning for a weapon, finding only a rusty poker by a fireplace. The door buckled, and I knew I'd trapped myself. I ran to a window, prying at the boards. They gave, just enough to squeeze through. I climbed out, falling hard on the other side, pain shooting through my arm. The forest was silent now, too silent, like it was done playing. I limped forward, clutching the poker, thinking I'd made it. Then I saw them, figures lined up at the tree line, watching. My stomach twisted. I'd escaped the cabin, but not them. I kept moving, praying for dawn. Miles later, I hit a road, asphalt cold under my feet. A truck's headlights blinded me, and I waved it down, sobbing. The driver, an old guy, looked spooked but let me in. "What happened?" he asked. I couldn't answer, just shook my head. He drove, radio crackling, and I thought I was safe. My mistake was not looking back. As we pulled away, I didn't see the figure step onto the road, watching, holding my notebook, the one I'd left in the cabin. I got home to Milwaukee, broken and jumpy, but alive. Or so I thought. Weeks later, I found it. My notebook, on my doorstep, open to a new page. Scrawled in red, "You shouldn't have come back." My blood went cold. I'd brought it with me, whatever they were. The tower, the forest, the voices, they weren't done. I'd escaped, but at a cost. Tragedy wasn't just what I'd left behind. It was what followed me home, waiting in the dark. I'm Nora Callahan, 29 years old, and I live in St. Louis, Missouri. Life's been a treadmill, bartending, bills, repeat. I needed a break, so I booked a fire lookout tower in Illinois' Garden of the Gods wilderness, a spot called Heron's Nest. Just me, my old Subaru, and 5 days of nothing but trees. I packed essentials, granola bars, a sleeping bag, a sketch pad for doodling. The drive up was quiet, cornfields giving way to dense forest. Something about the road narrowing made my chest tight, but I brushed it off. I was here to chill, not overthink. Heron's Nest Tower loomed at the end of a dirt path, a steel spiderweb against the sky. 60 feet up, a boxy cabin with windows like unblinking eyes. I met the caretaker, Ruth Gaynor, at the base, a wiry woman in her 50s with a clipped voice. "No wandering after dark," she said, handing me the key. Her stare lingered, like she knew something I didn't. I nodded, eager to get settled, and started the climb. The stairs swayed, creaking with every step. Up top, the cabin was sparse, wood floor, a cot, a table with a cracked lamp. The view was wild, though, rolling hills and trees glowing gold in the sunset. I felt exposed, like a bug under glass, but that was the point, right? Get out of my head, sketch some nature. My phone had one bar, then none, which I expected. I unpacked, ate a granola bar, and tried to relax. The quiet was heavy, though not peaceful, more like the world holding its breath. I'd read about these towers, built to spot wildfires, now rented to weirdos like me. Heron's Nest had a past. Some guy went missing here in the 80s, never found. Creepy, but I'm not superstitious. Still, as night crept in, the cabin felt off. I lit my lamp, shadows dancing on the walls. I sketched the view to calm down, but my lines kept wobbling. It was like the forest was leaning in, watching me scribble. The wind picked up, rattling the windows. I told myself it was normal. Towers are high, wind's a thing. But it sounded sharp, almost like tapping. I laughed it off. "Nora, you're not in a horror flick." My laugh echoed, too loud in the tiny space. I set my sketch pad down and walked the cabin, checking corners like a kid scared of monsters. Everything was fine, just me and my dumb nerves. I thought about St. Louis, neon lights, bar chatter, my cat napping on my couch. I missed it already. This trip was supposed to recharge me, but the tower felt like a cage, not a retreat. I pulled out a book, trying to distract myself, but my eyes kept drifting to the windows. The dark outside was thick, swallowing my lamp's glow. I told myself it was just night, just trees. I climbed into my sleeping bag, the cot creaking under me. The lamp flickered, probably a loose bulb, but it made my skin crawl. I turned it off, letting the dark take over. Big mistake. The wind got louder, whistling through the tower's frame. It almost sounded like words, but I couldn't make them out. I lay there, eyes wide, telling myself it was nothing. Sleep was a long shot now. I got up once, barefoot on the cold floor, to check the door. Locked, solid. I peeked out a window, seeing only my reflection. Pale, jumpy. The forest was invisible, but I felt it, pressing against the glass. I went back to bed, pulling the bag over my head like a kid. It was silly, but it helped. For a minute. Then something scratched outside, slow and deliberate, right below the cabin. Morning was hours away, and I was already regretting this whole idea. The tower wasn't just a lookout, It was a stage, and I was the only actor in some scary play I didn't sign up for. I hugged my knees, listening to the night, waiting for whatever came next. Morning light crept through the windows, pale and thin. I dragged myself off the cot, my neck stiff from barely sleeping. First problem, my stove wouldn't light. The gas hissed, but no flame. Useless. I ate a dry granola bar instead, crumbs sticking to my teeth. My water bottle was half empty too. I'd been careless last night, chugging to calm my nerves. I cursed myself, city girl mistake, thinking I'd nail this camping thing without a hitch. I checked the Subaru from the cabin's window, parked at the base like a lifeline. Something caught my eye, a dent on the hood, fresh, like someone had leaned on it hard. My stomach twisted. Could have been a branch, right? But the trees weren't that close. I grabbed my jacket, deciding to check it out. The stairs felt shakier going down, each step a loud clang in the quiet. The forest was still, no birds, just a faint hum in the air I couldn't place. At the car, the dent was worse up close, deep, with scratches radiating out. Not a branch. I ran my fingers over it, heart picking up. No way Ruth did this. She'd been gone when I arrived. I popped the trunk for my spare water, but the jug was slashed, plastic gaping like a wound. Water soaked my spare clothes, ruined. I stood there, breath shallow, picturing someone out here last night, messing with me. I should have driven away then, but I didn't. Back in the tower, I tried the radio by the desk. It crackled, then spat a voice, not safe, before cutting out. My hands went cold. Static, sure, but that sounded real, like a warning. I spun the dial, got nothing, and slammed it down. Okay, Nora, think. I could hike out, find a stream, but the map showed the nearest one was miles off. Or drive to town, but gas was tight, maybe enough for one trip. I paced, the cabin's walls feeling tighter. I decided to scout the area, look for water or a ranger. I grabbed my sketch pad, dumb, but it grounded me, and headed down again. The trail was faint, overgrown with thorns that snagged my jeans. I pushed through, sweat beading despite the chill. About a half-mile in, I found a marker, Heron's Nest, 1962. Cool, but the air felt wrong, heavy, like I'd crossed a line. I kept moving, eyes darting for any sign of trouble. Then I saw it, a bag half buried in leaves. Not mine, but recent, with a torn strap and a stale sandwich inside. My pulse spiked. Someone else had been here, maybe still was. I backed away, scanning the trees. Nothing moved, but the hum was back, louder, like a distant engine. I thought of true crime podcasts, hikers vanishing, bags left behind. Was this how it started? I turned back, legs heavy, the tower my only safe spot. Mistake number 2, thinking it was safe. Climbing up, I kept checking over my shoulder. The dent, the slashed jug, the bag. It was adding up, each piece small but scary as hell. I locked the cabin door, double-checking it, my hands sweaty. I could leave now, burn my gas and hope for a town. But night was coming, and those roads were a maze in the dark. I'd stay, ration my water, sketch to stay sane. Solid plan, right? Wrong, but I was too spooked to see it. I sat at the table, sketching the dented hood, my lines sharp and messy. It helped, sort of, like writing a bad dream to make it less real. But the hum outside didn't stop, and neither did the feeling I was being watched. I glanced at the windows, the forest fading to gray. It was like St. Louis never existed. Just me, this tower, and something waiting out there. I told myself I was paranoid, like when you swear someone's following you home. But this wasn't a city street. Evening settled in, the cabin colder now. I wrapped a blanket around me, eyes glued to the door. The hum faded, but something else took its place, a faint scrape, like metal on wood, somewhere below. I gripped my pencil, heart thumping, knowing I couldn't ignore it much longer. This wasn't just a bad trip, it was horror, creeping closer, and I was stuck right in its path. The scraping stopped, but my nerves didn't. I sat frozen, pencil digging into my palm, staring at the door. Then it came again, sharper, closer, right under the cabin floor. Metal on metal, slow, like someone dragging a blade. My breath caught, heart slamming so loud I swore they'd hear it. I told myself it was pipes, or the wind, anything but what my gut screamed. This wasn't paranoia, it was horror, real and here, and I was alone with it. I crept to the window, keeping low, and peeked out. The forest was black, my lamp's glow barely denting it. Something moved below, a flicker, too quick to pin down. Not an animal, too tall. My mouth went dry. I remembered bar stories, drunks swearing they saw figures in these woods, laughed off as booze talk. I wasn't laughing now. I clicked off the lamp, plunging the cabin into dark, hoping it hid me. The scraping circled the tower's base, steady, deliberate. I pressed against the wall, its cold wood grounding me. My mind raced. Could be vandals, messing with me for kicks. But out here, no houses, no roads, just trees and that bag I'd found. I pictured its owner, running, dropping it. Were they up here once, like me? The thought was disturbing, a punch I couldn't dodge. I gripped my sketch pad, useless now, but it kept my hands from shaking. A new sound, thumping, heavy on the stairs. One step, then another, climbing slow. I bit my lip, tasting salt, and slid under the cot. Dumb, but where else? The door was locked, but locks felt like paper against whatever this was. The thumping stopped, too close, just outside. I held my breath, dust tickling my nose, praying they'd leave. Then a voice, low, male, muffled, said, "Open it." My blood froze. Someone was there, and they weren't alone. I stayed still, heart pounding, picturing St. Louis, my bar, my cat, anything but this. The door rattled, not hard, just testing. I clamped a hand over my mouth, muffling a whimper. I thought of movies, screamers hiding, always found. Was that me now? The rattling stopped, but footsteps paced the platform, boots on metal, circling like sharks. I caught words, "Nose here," and my stomach twisted. They weren't guessing, they knew I was inside. I crawled out, quiet as I could, and grabbed my backpack. Water, keys, a flashlight, my only shot if I had to run. Run where? The Subaru was down there, with them. I checked the radio, desperate, but it was dead, not even static. Another mistake, trusting old tech in a horror show. The pacing stopped, and I waited, every second agony. Then a laugh, short, cold, right by the window. My skin crawled, they were playing with me. I risked a glance outside, staying low. Shadows moved on the stairs, 2, maybe 3, hard to tell. Tall, lean, carrying something, tools, weapons. My mind flashed to news clips, cults in nowhere towns, preying on loners. Was this their turf? I ducked back, pulse roaring, and checked the door's lock again. It held, but for how long? The cabin felt smaller, a trap snapping shut, and I was the bait. I stuffed my sketch pad in my pack, zipping it silent. Writing helped me think, but no time now. A thud hit the door, harder, wood creaking. I yelped, then clapped a hand over my mouth. Too late, they'd heard. The laugh came again, louder, joined by another. My eyes darted to the windows, the ceiling, anywhere but that door. Something was wrong, dead wrong, like the forest itself was in on it, cheering them on. The thuds grew rhythmic, pounding now, each one shaking me to my core. I backed to the far wall, flashlight shaking in my hand. The lamp flickered back on, unplugged, casting wild shadows. I didn't touch it. How? My breath hitched, panic clawing. The pounding stopped, sudden, and a new sound took over, scratching, slow, right above me. On the roof. I looked up, knowing I was out of time, caught in something scarier than I could have imagined. The scratching on the roof clawed at my sanity. I grabbed my backpack, heart hammering, and crept to the door. The pounding had stopped, but the silence was worse, like they were waiting. I cracked the door, cold air hitting my face, and peered down the stairs. Shadows shifted below, near my Subaru. My only shot was running, but my legs felt like jelly. I took a breath, slipped out, and started down, each step a scream in the quiet. Halfway down, a flashlight beam swept the trees, missing me by inches. I froze, clinging to the railing, my pulse deafening. Voices muttered, 2, maybe 3, near the car. I caught, "Find her," and my stomach dropped. They weren't leaving without me. I kept moving, slow, the stairs wobbling. At the bottom, I ducked behind a bush, gravel biting my knees. The Subaru was 20 feet away, but so were they, dark shapes circling it like vultures. I weighed my odds, sprint to the car or bolt into the woods. The car was faster, but they'd hear the engine. Woods it was. I crawled, twigs snapping under me, every sound a betrayal. A voice barked, "Check the trail," and boots crunched closer. I dove behind a tree, holding my breath, picturing bar fights I'd broken up. Drunks, not this. My flashlight was off, but my pack rattled, too loud. I cursed myself for not dumping it. City girl mistake, thinking I'd outsmart this horror. I moved again, deeper into the forest, branches tearing at my arms. The voices faded, but I felt eyes everywhere, the dark alive and scary. My foot hit something soft, a shoe, alone, laces frayed, like the bag I'd found. I gagged, stumbling back, and kept running. The tower was a faint glow behind me, no comfort. I needed a road, a ranger, anything. My lungs burned, but stopping wasn't an option, not with them hunting me. A light flickered ahead, could be a house, a camp. I pushed toward it, hope flaring, but tripped on a root, sprawling hard. My chin split, blood hot on my skin. I scrambled up, dizzy, and saw it wasn't a house, just my Subaru, headlights on, doors open. How? I'd locked it. Footsteps closed in, fast now. I dove inside, keys still in the ignition, thank God, and slammed the door. The engine roared, but a hand smashed the window, glass spraying. I floored it, tires spinning, the forest a blur. A figure loomed in the headlights, tall, hooded, unmoving. I swerved, heart in my throat, and kept going. The road was a nightmare, potholes rattling my teeth. Something thudded in the back, my pack? No, heavier. I didn't look, just drove, praying the gas held. The voices were gone, but the thudding wasn't, rhythmic, like someone was still with me. My skin crawled, horror sinking deeper. I hit a fork, no signs, just dirt paths. Left or right? I went left, instinct, my hands shaking on the wheel. The thudding stopped, but my rear view showed nothing, just black. I remembered true crime shows, victims escaping, only to crash. Not me, I told myself, but my eyes stung, fear choking me. The road narrowed, trees clawing the car. I was out, but not free, not even close. Miles later, the path widened, pavement glinting. Civilization? I pushed harder, the Subaru groaning. A shape darted across the road. Animal, maybe, but I didn't slow. My phone was dead, my water gone. Just me and this car against whatever was back there. The thudding started again, softer, from the trunk. I gripped the wheel, telling myself it was loose gear, but I knew better. Something was wrong, and it wasn't letting go. I kept driving, forest thinning, stars peeking through. A sign flashed, Shawnee Town, 15 miles. I could make it, get help, in this. But the thudding grew louder, deliberate, like a heartbeat. I glanced at the rear view, seeing only my own scared eyes. Whatever I'd escaped, it wasn't done with me. I pressed the gas, road humming, but the night felt alive, chasing me into the dark. The road stretched on, my Subaru's engine whining. I pulled over, hands trembling, unable to ignore it. Big mistake, stopping. I grabbed a tire iron from the passenger seat, my only weapon, and stepped out. The air was sharp, pine and fear mixing. I stood by the trunk, heart pounding, telling myself it was nothing, an animal, my pack. But deep down, I knew this was horror, and I'd walked right back into it. I popped the trunk, tire iron raised. Inside, a man, bound, gagged, eyes wide with terror. Not one of them, but like me, another victim. My stomach lurched. He mumbled, "They're coming," through the gag. I fumbled to untie him, my fingers useless, when headlights flared behind us. A truck, slowing down. I froze, caught between helping him and running. I chose wrong, city girl mistake, thinking I could save us both. I yanked the gag off, his name spilling out. Eli, a hiker, grabbed days ago. He said they were a group, hunting for sport, using the woods as their playground. The truck stopped, doors slamming. I pulled Eli up, but he was weak, legs buckling. "Go," he rasped, but I couldn't leave him. Footsteps crunched, voices laughing, familiar, cold. I dragged Eli toward the trees, tire iron slipping from my sweaty grip. We were prey, and they loved it. We stumbled through brush, branches snapping, my breath ragged. Eli slowed me down, but abandoning him wasn't me. I pictured St. Louis, my bar, my life, slipping away. A shout rang out, close, and I pushed Eli behind a rock, crouching low. Flashlights swept the dark, beams cutting like knives. I whispered, "Stay quiet," but Eli was panting, loud, giving us away. My heart sank. I'd saved him, only to doom us both. A figure loomed, faster than I expected, grabbing my arm. I swung, fist connecting, but But another pinned me, my face hitting dirt. Eli screamed, "Cut off quick." I thrashed, tasting blood, their laughs ringing. They dragged me back to the road, the Subaru still running, headlights blinding. I saw Eli, limp, tossed in the truck's bed like trash. My fault. I'd stopped. I tried to play hero. The horror was real, and I'd fed it. They tied my hands, rough rope biting my wrists. A man leaned close, breath sour, saying, "You ran well." I spat at him, earning a slap that split my lip. They shoved me in the truck, the door slamming like a coffin. I thought of the tower, the bag, the shoe, clues I'd ignored, thinking I was safe. Tragedy wasn't just Eli. It was me, believing I could outrun this. The engine roared, taking us deeper into the woods. Hours blurred, my head throbbing, fear numbing me. They stopped at a clearing, a fire crackling, more figures waiting. I was pulled out, knees hitting ground. Eli was gone, dead or worse, I didn't know. A woman stepped forward, holding my sketch pad, pages torn. "Pretty drawings," she mocked, tossing it in the fire. I lunged, pointless, earning kicks. My mistake was coming here, thinking solitude was safe. It wasn't, it was their trap. I woke later, alone, untied, lying by a stream. Dawn broke, birds chirping like nothing happened. My Subaru was gone, my pack too, just me, bruised alive. I stumbled to a road, flagged a car, and made it to a gas station. Cops listened, skeptical, finding no trace of Eli or them. Back in St. Louis, I locked my doors, jumped at shadows. Safe, but not really. A week later, a sketch, mine, of the tower slid under my door, with a note, "We're still watching." I'd escaped, but brought the horror home. Tragedy clung like damp rot. Eli's face haunted me, my choice to stop sealing his fate. The tower was their stage, and I'd played my part, survivor, but cursed. I burned the sketch, moved apartments, but the fear stayed, a scar from a camping trip turned nightmare. They were out there, waiting for the next fool, and I'd carry that truth forever, a wound that wouldn't close. I'm Felix Navarro, 41 years old, and I live in Louisville, Kentucky. Work's been eating me alive. Construction foreman, long hours, no peace. So I booked a fire lookout tower in Illinois' Midwinds National Tallgrass Prairie, a place called Starling Point. Just me, my rusty Ford pickup, and a week to breathe. I packed light, jerky, a sleeping bag, a deck of cards for solitaire. The drive up was all flat fields, then prairie grass swaying like a sea. Something about the emptiness got under my skin, but I figured that was just me needing to unplug. Starling Point Tower stood alone, a steel spike in the grasslands, maybe 70 feet high. The cabin at the top looked like a glass box, weathered but sturdy. I met the ranger, Clara Voss, at the base, tall, quiet, maybe 40, with eyes that didn't smile. "Stay on the trails," she said, tossing me the key. I nodded, but her tone stuck with me, like I was already in trouble. I climbed the stairs, metal clanging, the wind sharp and constant out here. Up top, the cabin was bare bones, wood floor, a cot, a desk with a dusty logbook. Windows wrapped around, showing miles of grass bending under the sky. It felt like I was floating, but not in a good way, more like a target. My phone had no bars, expected but still a gut punch. I unpacked, ate some jerky, and shuffled my cards. The quiet was big, not calming, like the prairie was sizing me up. I told myself it was fine, just what I signed up for. I'd heard about lookouts from a coworker, old posts for spotting fires, now rented for solitude. Starling Point had a story. Some watcher quit in the 90s, spooked, wouldn't say why. I shrugged it off, tall tales, right? But as dusk hit, the cabin turned creepy, shadows stretching long. I lit a battery lamp, its buzz the only sound besides the wind. I dealt a hand of solitaire, but my eyes kept drifting to the windows, expecting something. The wind howled, shaking the tower just enough to rattle my nerves. I laughed. "Felix, you're too old for ghost stories." But it didn't help. The cabin felt alive, creaking like it was talking back. I flipped through the logbook, finding old entries, weather notes, bird sightings, then one scrawled line, "They're here." No date, no name. My stomach twisted, but I shut it fast. Just a prank. Had to be, messing with campers like me. I thought about Louisville, my crew yelling over drills, beers at the dive bar. I missed the noise already. This trip was supposed to clear my head, but the tower was doing the opposite, like it wanted me on edge. I shuffled my cards again, the slap of paper grounding me. Outside, the prairie was black now, swallowing my lamp's light. I told myself it was just night, just grass, nothing else. I climbed into my sleeping bag, the cot hard under my back. The lamp stayed on. I wasn't about to sit in the dark. The wind got louder, whistling through the tower's frame, almost like voices, but I couldn't catch words. I lay there, cards scattered on the floor, trying to relax. It wasn't working. My gut said something was off, like I'd walked into a game I didn't know the rules to. I got up to check the door, locked solid. The windows showed nothing but my own tired face, bags under my eyes. I sat back down, picking up a card, an ace of spades, bad luck in some circles. I tossed it aside, half smiling at my nerves. Then I heard it, a thud, faint, from the base of the tower. Could have been the wind, or something falling. But it felt heavy, deliberate, like a warning in a scary story I couldn't put down. The night stretched on, the tower groaning in the cold. I kept my lamp burning, eyes flicking to the stairs outside. This wasn't the break I wanted. It was something else, something horror-tinged, and I was stuck in the middle of it, waiting for the next move. Morning hit like a dull blade, gray light barely cutting the dark. I rolled off the cot, back aching, and checked my stuff. Bad news. My cooler had leaked, soaking my jerky and bread. Moldy already, great. I salvaged what I could, but food was tight now. My water was okay, but I'd guzzled more than planned, nervous sipping through the night. Rookie mistake, thinking I'd nail this camping thing without a snag. I leaned out the window to check my Ford below. Something looked off. A tire was low, sagging into the dirt. My gut sank. Flat. Out here? I grabbed my keys, needing to know. The stairs felt rickety, swaying in the wind, each step louder than I liked. The prairie stretched empty, grass hissing like it was whispering secrets. At the truck, it wasn't just low, the tire was slashed, a clean gash. No way that was an accident. I stood there, wind biting my face, scanning the grass. Could have been kids, vandals, but this place was nowhere, miles from anything. I checked the other tires, fine for now. My spare was good, but changing it alone, with no cell signal? Risky. I thought about Clara, the ranger, but she hadn't mentioned patrols. I kicked the dirt, mad at myself. Should have brought a sat phone, or at least more food. Mistake number 2, coming unprepared. Back in the tower, I tried the desk radio. Static, then a hum, like someone breathing too close. I clicked it off, heart thumping. Just old gear, right? But it felt personal, like a jab. I paced the cabin, all 10 feet of it, weighing options. Drive out now, risk another flat, or stay put, ration what I had. Town was 20 miles, maybe more, through winding trails. I wasn't sure the truck could make it, not like this. I decided to scout for a trail, maybe find a stream or ranger post. I grabbed my deck of cards, dumb, but they calmed me, and headed down again. The path near the tower was faint, grass swallowing it fast. I pushed through, the wind carrying a faint smell, sour like old meat. A quarter-mile out, I found a marker, Starling Point, 1978. Neat, but the air felt thick, wrong, like I'd wandered into a scary story's opening scene. Then I spotted it, a glove, leather, half buried in the dirt. Worn, but not old, with dark stains I didn't want to name. My pulse kicked up. Someone's trash, maybe, but it looked left behind, like the owner didn't walk away. I backed off, eyes darting. The grass moved, not just wind, something bigger, rustling low. Could have been a deer, but my gut said no. I hustled back, the tower's silhouette my only anchor. Climbing up, I kept glancing back. The slashed tire, the glove, that radio hum. It was stacking up, small but disturbing as hell. I locked the cabin, hands sweaty, and checked the windows. The prairie looked calm, but I wasn't buying it. I could bolt now, limp the truck to town, but night was creeping closer, and those trails at dusk? No thanks. I'd stay, play it smart. Or so I thought. I sat at the desk, dealing solitaire to steady my nerves. The cards helped, kind of like counting breaths in a panic. But the wind was picking up, rattling the glass, and that smell was back, faint but sharp. I told myself it was nothing, like when you smell smoke in the city and it's just a grill. But this wasn't Louisville. This was me, alone, in a place that felt alive in a horror movie way. Evening rolled in, the cabin dimming fast. I lit my lamp, shadows jumping. I tried to focus on the cards, but my eyes kept hitting the windows, the door. The grass outside was a black sea now, endless, hiding God knows what. I shuffled the deck, ace of spades on top again. Bad luck, my crew would say. I laughed it off, but then I heard it, a low hum, not the wind, coming from below. My hands froze, knowing this trip was about to get a lot scarier. The hum grew louder, buzzing in my bones. I dropped my cards, the ace of spades staring up like a curse, and crept to the window. The prairie was black, my lamp's glow a weak shield. Then I saw it, a light, faint, bobbing in the grass near the tower's base. Not a firefly, too steady, too big. My heart slammed. Someone was out there, and that hum wasn't mechanical. It was voices, low and wrong, blending with the wind. I killed the lamp, plunging the cabin into dark. My eyes adjusted, tracking that light. It circled the tower, slow, like a wolf sniffing prey. I pressed against the wall, breath shallow, picturing my crew back in Louisville. Joking, clueless about crap like this. The hum stopped, but the light kept moving, joined by another. Two now, maybe more. I gripped the desk, my only weapon a damn pen. Horror was real, and I was neck deep in it. A creak hit the stairs, metal groaning under weight. Someone was climbing, not rushing, each step deliberate. I froze, sweat beading, my mind screaming run. Run where? The truck was down there, with them. The creaking got closer, stopping just below the cabin. I waited, every second a knife. Then a whisper. He's up there. Clear as day through the floor. My stomach twisted. They knew my name, or at least that I was trapped. I slid under the cot, dust choking me, feeling like a kid hiding from monsters. The door rattled, soft, testing the lock. I bit my fist, holding in a curse. I'd seen news clips, home invasions, stalkers, but this was different, scarier, like the prairie itself was in on it. The rattling stopped, but boots scraped the platform, circling slow. I caught more whispers, wait, night, and my blood ran cold. They weren't leaving, they were playing with me. I crawled out, quiet, grabbing my backpack. Keys, water, cards, useless junk, but all I had. The radio was dead, no help there. Mistake number 3, thinking I could tough this out. A thud hit the wall, sharp, like a fist. I flinched, heart racing, and checked the windows. Those lights were closer, weaving through the grass, maybe 4 now. Human shapes, tall, carrying something, sticks, tools. My mind flashed to the glove, those stains. Was this their game? The door shook again, harder, wood creaking. I backed to the far corner, tripping over my sleeping bag. A laugh cut through, low, mean, right outside. My skin crawled. I pictured Clara, her warning about trails, but this wasn't random. These people wanted me here, alone, in their horror show. The laugh spread, 2 voices, maybe 3, circling like hyenas. I clutched my keys, ready to stab if they got in. I risked a peek outside, staying low. The lights stopped, aimed up at the cabin, blinding me. I ducked, pulse roaring, hearing my name. Felix, hissed, not shouted. How? Nobody knew me here. I thought of bar fights I'd seen, guys posturing, but this was colder, planned. The door groaned, lock bending. I grabbed the desk chair, wedging it under the handle, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. It wouldn't hold long. The whispers turned to chants, words I didn't know, rising and falling. Cult stuff? I'd laughed at those stories, wackos in robes, but nothing was funny now. A shadow passed the window, too quick, too close. I sank to the floor, hugging my pack, telling myself I'd fight. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't just trouble. It was wrong, disturbing, like I'd stumbled into something ancient, hungry, and way bigger than me. The chanting grew, vibrating the glass, and then a new sound, scratching, slow, on the roof. My eyes shot up, tracing the ceiling. Something heavy shifted, not wind, not an animal. I gripped my keys tighter, knowing I was out of moves. The tower wasn't a lookout anymore. It was a cage, and whatever was out there was done waiting, ready to make this nightmare real. The scratching on the roof turned my blood to ice. I grabbed my backpack, keys cutting into my palm, and yanked the chair from the door. The chanting outside swelled, voices twisting like a sick song. I cracked the door, wind hitting me, and saw those lights, 4, maybe 5, bobbing in the grass below. My truck was my only shot, but they were close, too close. I bolted down the stairs, metal screaming under me, expecting hands to grab me any second. Halfway down, a beam caught me, blinding. I ducked, nearly falling, and kept going, heart pounding like a jackhammer. Voices shouted, "He's moving," and boots crunched, chasing. I hit the ground, sprinting for the Ford, its slashed tire mocking me. I dove inside, locking the doors, keys shaking as I jammed them in. The engine coughed, then roared. Headlights flared, showing figures, tall, hooded, scattering into the grass. I peeled out, horror driving me. The trail was a mess, ruts shaking the truck, the flat tire thumping bad. Those lights followed, darting through the prairie, not giving up. I gripped the wheel, picturing my crew, guys who'd laugh, then fight. No backup now. Something hit the tailgate, hard, like a rock. I swerved, glancing back, seeing nothing but dark. My mind screamed cult, poachers, worse. The truck lurched, tires shredding, but I pushed it, praying for pavement, for escape. A figure stepped into the path, unmoving. I jerked the wheel, missing them, the truck skidding into grass. The engine stalled, silence crashing in. I turned the key, nothing. Dead. My breath hitched, sweat stinging my eyes. Lights closed in, slow, like they knew I was done. I grabbed my backpack, flashlight off, and slipped out, crouching low. The prairie was alive, grass hissing, hiding them. I ran, legs burning, toward nowhere, just away. I ducked into taller grass, heart slamming, listening. The chanting was back, softer, circling me. I tripped, face hitting dirt, tasting blood. My flashlight rolled away, beam spinning wild. I grabbed it, clicking it off, and crawled, every rustle a threat. A voice called, "Felix, don't hide." Calm, sickening. How'd they know me? I thought of job site pranks, but this was horror, life or death, and I was losing the plot. Something snagged my ankle, wire, thin and sharp. I yanked free, skin tearing, and kept moving, blood soaking my boot. The grass parted ahead, showing a ditch, cover, maybe. I slid in, mud cold, and held still, breath ragged. Boots passed close, voices muttering. Lost him, keep looking, then faded. I waited, shaking, picturing Louisville's lights, so far away. The truck was gone, my cards, my sanity. I had to move, but where? I crawled out, staying low, the prairie endless. A light flickered far off, could be a road, a house. I stumbled toward it, thorns ripping my hands. The chanting stopped, but my gut said they weren't done. I found a trail, narrow, leading to that light. Hope sparked, but then I saw it. A trap, wire glinting like the one before. I froze, too late. A shadow moved behind me, fast, and pain cracked my skull, stars bursting. I fell, the light fading, their game far from over. I woke, head throbbing, grass poking my face. The tower was gone, the truck too, just me, alone, in the dark. I staggered up, no pack, no keys, just my hands, sticky with blood. The light was closer now, steady. A building, maybe. I limped toward it, each step agony, hearing whispers in the wind, or maybe my head. I was out, but not safe, not even close. Something rustled behind me, soft, like they were letting me run, enjoying the chase. The trail widened, gravel underfoot. Civilization? I pushed harder, ignoring the pain, the fear. The light was a shed, locked, no one inside. I pounded the door, voice hoarse, no answer. Shadows shifted in the grass, closing in again. I ran, lungs screaming, knowing I'd escaped the tower, but not them. The prairie was theirs, and I was still prey, stumbling through a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I collapsed by the shed, chest heaving, blood dripping. The shadows stopped, watching, their silence scarier than the chants. I scrambled to my feet, hands scraping gravel, and checked the shed's lock, rusted, breakable. I kicked it, wood splintering, and slipped inside, barring the door with a crate. My mistake was stopping, thinking cover meant safety. It didn't. This was their turf, and I'd just caged myself again. Inside, the shed stank of oil and rot. A glint caught my eye, a knife, old, on a shelf. I grabbed it, my only edge, and crouched by the crate, listening. Footsteps circled, slow, deliberate. I pictured my crew, their dumb bets. Felixed fight, they'd say. But this wasn't a bar brawl. A voice whispered through the wall. You're late, mocking close. My heart sank. They'd planned this, lured me, and I'd bitten, hook and all, straight into horror. The crate shook, someone testing it. I gripped the knife, sweat burning my cuts. I thought of the glove, the logbook. They're here. Not a prank, truth. I'd ignored it, my second mistake, thinking I was tougher than this place. The shaking stopped, but a laugh started, spreading, 3 voices, maybe 4. I scanned the shed. Tools, cans, no way out but the door. A window, boarded, was my shot. I pried at it, nails splitting, the laughs louder, knowing I was trapped. Wood splintered, the crate giving way. I dove for the window, boards cracking, and squeezed through, glass cutting my arm. I hit the ground running, prairie swallowing me again. The laughs chased, boots pounding. I clutched the knife, useless against so many, but it kept me moving. A light flashed ahead, a road, headlights. I waved, screaming, a car slowing. Hope surged, but I didn't see the wire, another trap, until it caught my leg, yanking me down hard. Pain exploded, my ankle twisted. The car stopped, an older guy stepping out, face pale. Help! I yelled, crawling toward him. He hesitated, then ran to me, but shadows moved faster, emerging from the grass. I swung the knife, slicing air, as hands grabbed me, pulling me back. The guy froze, then bolted to his car, tires screeching. My heart broke. He was gone, and I was theirs, my escape a cruel joke, tragedy in every step. They dragged me through the grass, knife torn from my hand. I fought, fists weak, their grip iron. A woman's voice said, "He'll do." Calm, like picking meat. They stopped at a pit, shallow, fresh dug, with things inside I couldn't name. I screamed, throat raw, picturing Louisville, my life, slipping away. They tied me, rope biting, and left me there, stars above, their steps fading. I thought I'd die, but that wasn't the worst part, not yet. Hours later, I woke in a ditch, untied, alive. Dawn glowed, grass still. No pit, no ropes, just me, broken, knife nearby, stained red. I staggered to a road, flagged a truck, and mumbled my story. Cops found nothing. No shed, no pit, just my truck, fixed, parked neat. Back in Louisville, I locked my doors, drank to forget. But a month later, my cards, same deck, showed up, scattered on my porch, ace of spades on top, with a note. You left early. I burned the cards, moved cities, but the horror stayed, a stain. The pit haunted me. What was in it, what they wanted. My mistake was going to that tower, thinking I'd find peace. I'd survived, but at a cost, knowing they're out there, hunting, and I'd been their game. Tragedy wasn't just that night. It was carrying it, feeling their eyes, knowing they'd find me again. The prairie took something, my nerve, my sleep, maybe more. I'd escaped, but not really. Starling Point was their altar, and I'd walked right to it. A fool who thought camping was safe. Now, every wind sounds like them, every shadow their shape, and I'm left with a truth too heavy. Some horrors don't end. They follow you home, forever. I'm Tessa Hargrove, 36 years old, and I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. My life's been a slog. Office manager, endless emails, no spark. So I rented a fire lookout tower in Illinois' Dixon Springs State Park, a spot called Owl's Roost. Just me, my battered Honda CR-V, and 6 days to reset. I packed light, trail mix, a sleeping bag, a journal to sort my thoughts. The drive up was all back roads, trees closing in, radio cutting out. It felt isolating, but that's what I wanted, or so I thought. Owl's Roost Tower stood in a clearing, a steel skeleton 60 feet high, topped with a glassed-in cabin. It looked exposed, like it dared the forest to take a swing. The park manager, Lyle Dunn, met me at the base, stocky, 50s, with a curt nod. "Don't leave trash," he grunted, handing me the key. His eyes flicked to my car, then away, like he didn't expect me to stay long. I climbed the stairs, metal humming under my boots, eager to settle in. Up top, the cabin was basic, wood floor, a cot, a table with a chipped mug. Windows gave a full view of the park, dense woods, hills fading to dusk. It was gorgeous, but unsettling, like I was on display. My phone had no signal, which I'd planned for, but it still made my stomach dip. I unpacked, munched some trail mix, and jotted in my journal. Day 1. Quiet. Too quiet. I smirked, trying to keep it light. I'd read about lookouts online, built to spot fires, now leased to folks chasing solitude. Owl's Roost had a blip of history. A camper left in a hurry years back, no explanation. Spooky, but I'm not one for ghost stories. Still, as night fell, the cabin got eerie, shadows pooling in corners. I lit a lantern, its glow sharp against the glass. I wrote more, but my pen kept stalling, like the forest was distracting me. The wind kicked up, rattling the windows, a low moan weaving through. I told myself it was normal. Towers are high, wind's loud. But it felt personal, like a nudge I couldn't ignore. I laughed. Come on, Tessa, don't be that person. The laugh died fast, echoing wrong in the small space. I paced, checking the door, the locks, anything to feel in control. The woods outside were black, soaking up my light. I thought about Cincinnati, my desk, my noisy neighbors, coffee runs. I missed it, which was wild for day 1. This trip was supposed to fix me, clear the fog, but the tower felt like a test I hadn't studied for. I flipped through my journal, reading old entries, same complaints, different dates. Out here, they seemed small, but the cabin didn't. It felt alive, watching me fidget. I crawled into my sleeping bag, the cot creaking like it resented me. I kept the lantern on, too chicken for total dark. The wind grew sharper, whistling through the tower's frame, almost forming words I couldn't catch. I lay there, journal open beside me, trying to chill. My gut said chill wasn't an option. Not here, not tonight. I got up once, barefoot, to peek outside. The forest was a void, my reflection pale and twitchy in the glass. I saw nothing, but felt everything. Eyes, maybe, or just the weight of being alone. I went back to bed, pulling the bag tight, telling myself it was just nerves. Then I heard it, a knock, soft but clear, from the base of the stairs. Wind, I hoped, but it sounded too human, too much like trouble in a scary story I couldn't close. The night dragged, the tower groaning, my lantern flickering. This wasn't the escape I'd pictured. It was something else, something horror-edged, and I was stuck in it, waiting for whatever knocked next. Dawn crept in, gray and heavy, barely touching the cabin, and I was already regretting this tower getaway. I dragged myself off the cot, eyes gritty from a sleepless night, and checked my gear. First snag, my lantern was low on battery, flickering like it was on its last legs. I'd brought spares, but only 2, sloppy planning. My food was okay, but I'd eaten half my trail mix in a nervous binge. City girl mistake, thinking I'd coast through this without a hitch. I leaned out the window to eye my Honda below. Something was off. A door was ajar, driver's side, glinting in the dim light. My heart skipped. I'd locked it, I swore I had. I grabbed my keys, needing to check, and started down the stairs. They wobbled, creaking loud in the stillness, the forest too quiet. No birds, just a faint buzz I couldn't place. At the car, the door was open, a smudge on the handle, dark, like grease. Or worse, I slammed it shut, checking inside. Nothing gone, but my map was unfolded, crumpled on the seat. I hadn't touched it since yesterday. My stomach nodded. Could have been Lyle, the manager, checking my car, right? But he'd been gone when I arrived. I locked up tight, scanning the trees. The woods felt heavy, like they were holding a secret. I climbed back up, legs shaky, telling myself it was nothing. Mistake number 2, believing that. In the cabin, I tried the old radio on the table. It hissed, then coughed a voice, "Leave now," before dying. I froze, hands cold, spinning the dial for more. Nothing but static. My mind raced. Ranger signal, maybe, or a prank. But out here, I paced, the floor creaking, and weighed my options. Drive to town, burn gas I wasn't sure I had, or stay, save my supplies. The nearest store was miles off, roads a maze. I wasn't ready to risk it. I decided to hike a bit, look for a trail or water. I stuffed my journal in my pack. Dumb, but it kept me steady, and headed down again. The path was overgrown, roots snaking across. I pushed through, moss slick under my boots, the air thick with a sour tang, like decay. Half a mile out, I found a sign. Owl's Roost, EST 1965. Neat, but the buzz was back, stronger, like a swarm I couldn't see. The forest seemed to shift, trees leaning closer. Then I saw it, a scarf, red, caught in thorns, fluttering like a flag. Not old, not mine. My pulse jumped. Someone's litter, sure, but it looked abandoned, like they'd run. I stepped back, eyes darting. The buzz stopped, replaced by a rustle, deep in the brush. Could have been a deer, but it felt wrong, heavy, like it was watching. I turned back, fast, the tower my only safe spot. Or so I thought, another mistake. Climbing up, I kept checking behind me. The open door, the scarf, that radio voice. It was piling up, small but scary as hell. I locked the cabin, hands trembling, and peered out. The forest looked still, but I wasn't fooled. I could leave now, try the roads, but dusk was falling, and those woods at night? No way. I'd ration my food, charge my lantern, right to stay calm. Smart, right? Wrong. I sat with my journal, scribbling the scarf, the smudge, my lines messy. It helped, sort of, like pinning a bad dream to paper. But the buzz was outside now, faint, circling the tower. I told myself it was bugs, like Cincinnati cicadas driving me nuts. But this wasn't home. This was me, stuck in a place that felt alive, and not in a good way, like a horror story creeping up on me. Evening settled, the cabin dimming, my lantern barely holding. I wrote more, eyes flicking to the windows. The woods were black, swallowing everything. I tried to focus, but the buzz grew, joined by a new sound. A tap, slow, on the stairs below. My pen stopped, heart racing, knowing I'd ignored too much already, and whatever was out there wasn't staying quiet much longer. The tapping on the stairs froze me, my journal slipping to the floor. The taps grew louder, deliberate, climbing closer. I killed my lantern, heart pounding, and crouched by the cot. The cabin was dark, but moonlight showed shadows moving outside. 2, maybe 3, on the platform. My breath caught, shallow and loud in my ears. This wasn't wind or animals. It was human, and that made it scarier, like a horror story I couldn't escape. I peeked through a window, staying low. Figures stood there, tall, still, their faces hidden, hoods, maybe masks. One held something, a stick, a blade, glinting faintly. My stomach twisted. I thought of Cincinnati break-ins, petty thieves, but this was different, planned, like they'd waited for me. A voice hissed, "Tessa," soft, right outside the door. How'd they know my name? Panic clawed me, real and raw. The door rattled, lock straining. I bit my lip, tasting blood, and slid under the table, dust stinging my eyes. Dumb hiding spot, but my brain was stuck, screaming hide. The rattling stopped, but boots scraped the platform, circling slow. I heard whispers, inside, ready, and my skin crawled. They weren't guessing. They knew I was here, alone, in their game. I clutched my keys, useless, wishing I'd packed a knife, anything. I thought of the scarf, the radio, warnings I'd brushed off. Mistake number 3, ignoring my gut. A thud hit the wall, sharp, like a warning shot. I flinched, knocking my journal, pages crinkling loud. I froze, praying they hadn't heard. A laugh answered, low, cruel, spreading to another voice. My heart sank. They'd heard, and they liked it. The cabin felt smaller, a box closing in, trapping me in this disturbing mess. I crawled out, hands shaking, and grabbed my backpack. Keys, water, nothing useful. The radio was dead, no help. I checked the door, still locked, but the handle twitched, someone testing it again. I backed to the far wall, tripping over my sleeping bag, my pulse roaring. I pictured news stories, missing campers, never found. Was this how it started? The whispers grew, open it, and I knew I was running out of time. A shadow passed the window, too close, blocking the moon. I ducked, heart hammering, smelling that sour tang again, stronger now, like it came with them. I told myself to think, barricade the door, scream, anything, but fear glued me down. The lock clicked, bending, and I yelped, clapping a hand over my mouth. Too late. Another laugh, louder, right outside, like they were feeding off my panic, turning this into pure horror. I shoved the table against the door, with scraping, my arms burning. It wouldn't hold, but it bought seconds. The whispers turned to murmurs, rhythmic, like a chant, making my head spin. Cults? Psychos? I'd scoffed at those Dateline episodes, but now I was living one. A new sound started, scratching, slow, on the glass behind me. I spun, seeing nothing but my own scared eyes reflected, but the scratching kept going, deliberate, taunting. I sank to the floor, hugging my pack, keys digging into my palm. The murmurs grew, vibrating the cabin, and I caught words, stay hours, twisting my gut. I thought of home, my desk, my boring life, safe, gone. The door shook, harder, table sliding an inch. I scrambled back, hitting the cot, knowing I couldn't hide forever. Something was wrong, dead wrong, like I'd walked into their ritual, and they weren't letting me walk out. The scratching spread, to the walls, the roof, everywhere at once. I covered my ears, but it burrowed in, relentless, like the forest itself was clawing at me. The door groaned, ready to give, and a shadow filled the window, still, watching. I gripped my pack tighter, no plan, just fear, stuck in a tower that wasn't mine anymore, with something scarier than I'd ever imagined waiting to break through. The scratching stopped, but my heart was a drum. I yanked the table aside, grabbed my backpack, and cracked the door open. The platform was empty, but the forest hummed with that chant, low and sick. My Honda sat below, my only shot, but shadows flickered in the trees. 3, maybe more. I bolted down the stairs, metal clanging, each step begging them to hear me. I didn't look back, fear pushing me like a shove. I hit the ground, sprinting, keys slippery in my hand. A light flashed, someone's beam, sweeping close. I dove behind a bush, thorns biting, breath ragged. The chant grew louder, words twisting, like they knew I'd run. My car was 10 feet away, door still ajar from before. I crawled, dirt in my nails, hearing boots, too close. I pictured my office, safe, boring. Not this horror, this chase, with my life on the line. I reached the Honda, sliding in, slamming the door. The engine sputtered, then caught, headlights cutting the dark. Figures moved in the beam, hooded, still, like statues. I floored it, tires spinning, the trail a blur of ruts and roots. Something hit the roof, hard, cracking the windshield. I swerved, heart in my throat, glass webbing under my eyes. The chant followed, echoing in the trees, like the forest itself was hunting me. The road twisted, branches clawing the car. My gas gauge was low. Damn it, Tessa, why didn't you check? I pushed harder, the cracks spreading, vision blurring. A shape darted across the path, human, fast. I jerked the wheel, scraping a tree, bark flying. My hands shook, mind flashing to news clips. Car chases, bad ends. I wasn't that person, but here I was, running from something scarier than I could name, praying for a way out. I hit a clearing, the trail wider, but the engine coughed, slowing. No, no, no. I coasted, lights dimming, and stopped, dead in the woods. Silence rushed in, thick, broken by that chant, closer now. I locked the doors, backpack hugged tight, my flashlight shaking. A tap hit the window, slow, deliberate. I didn't look, just sank low, telling myself I'd fight. Fight what? Shadows circled, beams stabbing through the glass, pinning me like a bug. I fumbled my keys, ready to try again, when the tapping spread, roof, doors, everywhere. My chest tightened, panic choking me. I thought of bar fights I'd seen, drunks swinging, easy to dodge. Not this. A face pressed the passenger window, pale, eyes blank, gone fast. I screamed, dropping my flashlight, beam spinning wild. I had to move, woods or nothing. I unlocked the door, slipped out, and ran, trees swallowing me, the car left behind. I crashed through brush, thorns ripping my legs, no plan, just away. The chant faded, but footsteps followed, steady, not rushing, like they enjoyed it. I tripped, knee slamming rock, pain flaring. I crawled behind a log, breath hitching, hearing my name. Tessa, whispered, not shouted. My skin crawled. I clutched a stick, pathetic weapon, knowing I'd escaped the tower, but not them, not this horror show. I moved again, low, forest thick. A light glowed ahead, could be a ranger, a house. I pushed toward it, hope flickering, but the footsteps stayed, patient, like they knew I'd tire. I found a stream, cold, splashing through, thinking it'd hide my tracks. Dumb hope. A wire caught my ankle, thin, sharp, yanking me down. I clawed free, blood hot, but a shadow loomed, silent, raising something heavy. Pain cracked my head, and the light went black. I woke, face in mud, head throbbing. The stream gurgled nearby. No chance, no steps. My pack was gone, keys too, just me, alive for now. I staggered up, the light closer, a cabin maybe. I limped toward it, each step screaming, feeling eyes in the dark. I ditched the car, the tower, but not the fear, not the sense I was still theirs, running through a nightmare with no end in sight. I reached the cabin, its windows dark, no help inside. I pounded the door, voice hoarse, no answer. The forest was quiet, too quiet, like it was watching. My ankle bled, head pounding, but I tried the knob, unlocked. I slipped in, barring it with a chair, thinking I'd won a second. Mistake number 4, believing anywhere was safe. The air stank, sour, like the scarf I'd found, and I knew I'd walked into their hands again. A noise, soft, from the back. I gripped my stick, heart racing, and crept toward it. A girl, tied up, maybe 20, eyes huge in the dark. "They're coming," she whispered, voice cracked. I dropped the stick, fumbling to untie her, my fingers numb. Her name was Mara, a hiker snatched days ago. She said they hunted for fun, picking loners like us. I heard boots outside, circling, and my guts sank. I'd led them right to her. I pulled Mara up, her legs weak, and aimed for a back window. The chair splintered, door shaking. I smashed the glass, helping her through, glass cutting my hand. We ran, forest swallowing us, but the boots followed, fast, laughing now. I dragged Mara, her gasps loud, slowing us. I thought of Cincinnati, my desk, my life, fading like a dream. My mistake was stopping, thinking I could save her. Horror didn't care about heroes. We hit a clearing, Mara stumbling, me half carrying her. Lights flashed, 3 beams, closing in. I pushed her behind a tree, whispering, "Stay," but she clung, terrified. I swung my stick, hitting air, as a hand grabbed my hair, yanking me down. Mara screamed, cut off, a dull thud silencing her. I kicked, nails clawing dirt, their laughs cold. They tied my wrists, rope burning, and dragged me back, Mara's body limp in the grass, my fault, my failure. They hauled me to a pit, shallow, reeking, things glinting inside. I fought, elbows cracking ribs, but they were too many, too strong. A man said, "She's got fight," like I was cattle. I saw my journal, torn, in the dirt, my life, mocked. They shoved me in, dirt raining, my screams muffled. I thought of the tower, the scarf, clues I'd ignored, thinking I was smart. Tragedy wasn't just Mara, it was me, believing I'd win. I clawed up, gasping, pit empty, they'd left a game. Dawn broke, birds chirping, like nothing happened. I found Mara, dead, eyes open, my stick nearby. I sobbed, running, hitting a road. A trucker stopped, kind, but cops found no pit, no body, just my Honda, clean, parked neat. Back in Cincinnati, I locked my doors, quit my job, saw Mara in every shadow. I'd escaped, but not whole, carrying her death like a stone. Weeks later, my journal appeared. On my bed, pages intact, but new words scrawled. "You owe us." I burned it, moved, changed my name, but the horror clung, a scar. The tower was their lure, and I'd bitten, dragging Mara with me. My mistake was thinking I could help, that running meant freedom. It didn't. They'd let me go, but kept my soul, watching, waiting. I see them in crowds, hear their chants in wind, feel the pit's dirt in my lungs. Owl's Roost wasn't just a place. It was a door, and I'd opened it, letting tragedy in. I'm alive, but not living, haunted by Mara, by them, knowing they're out there, picking their next mark. Some horrors don't die. They follow, whispering your name, forever. The camping trip broke me, a cruel joke I'd laughed at, thinking I'd find peace. Now, peace is a myth, replaced by fear, by eyes in the dark, by a debt I can't pay. I'd run again, but they'd find me. They always do, and that's the real tragedy, the one I carry alone. I'm Malcolm Drayton, 32 years old, and I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. My life's been a treadmill, auto shop mechanic, grease stains, no brakes. So I booked a fire lookout tower in Illinois' Kankakee River State Park, a place called Crow's Perch. Just me, my old Dodge Ram, and 5 days to clear my head. I packed simple: sandwiches, a sleeping bag, a harmonica I barely play. The drive up was quiet, fields turning to woods, sky heavy with clouds. Something about the solitude felt sharp, like a blade I didn't see. Crow's Perch Tower rose from a clearing, a steel frame 65 feet high, topped with a glass cabin that looked too small for comfort. The park warden, Esther Klein, met me at the base, lean, 60s, with a handshake like wire. "No shortcuts through the woods," she said, eyeing my truck like it didn't belong. I nodded, grabbed the key, and climbed the stairs, metal creaking, wind tugging my jacket. It felt like the tower was waiting for me, and not in a good way. Up top, the cabin was stark: wood floor, a cot, a desk with a warped map. Windows showed endless trees, the Kankakee River glinting far off. It was wild, but exposed, like I was a fish in a bowl. My phone had no bars, as expected, but it still made my chest tight. I unpacked, ate a sandwich, ham, soggy already, and tried my harmonica. The notes were sour, echoing wrong in the tiny space. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the air held a grudge. I'd heard about lookouts from a buddy, old fire posts, now rented for escape. Crow's Perch had a story. A ranger bailed in the 70s, spooked by lights in the woods. I shrugged it off. Campfire tales, right? But as dusk hit, the cabin turned creepy, shadows crawling over the walls. I lit a flashlight, its beam jittery, and sat at the desk. I doodled on the map, dumb habit, but my lines kept veering, like the forest was pulling my hand. The wind rose, rattling the glass, a low howl weaving through. I told myself it was fine. Towers shake, it's normal. But it sounded off, like a voice trying to form. I laughed. "Malcolm, don't be a fool." The laugh felt flat, swallowed by the cabin. I paced, checking the door, the locks, anything to feel grounded. Outside, the woods were black, eating my light, giving nothing back. I thought about Indy, my shop, my loud radio, beers with the crew. I missed it already, day one. This trip was supposed to fix the noise in my head, but the tower was worse, like it amplified every doubt. I tried the harmonica again, a weak tune, but stopped fast. The sound felt like bait, calling something I didn't want to meet. The forest stared back, silent, daring me to keep going. I climbed into my sleeping bag, cot creaking, flashlight on low. The dark pressed in, thick, making the cabin feel smaller. The wind got sharper, whistling through the frame, almost whispering my name. I shook it off. Nerves, that's all. But my gut wasn't buying it. I lay there, eyes wide, gripping the flashlight, knowing sleep was a lost cause in this place. I got up once, boots on, to check the windows. Nothing but trees, my reflection gaunt, like I'd aged a year overnight. I sat back down, doodling again, sketching the tower, jagged, wrong. Then I heard it, a rustle, faint, below the stairs. Could have been leaves, a raccoon. But it felt heavy, like a step, like something horror-tinged testing the edge of my world. The night stretched, the tower groaning, my flashlight dimming. This wasn't the break I'd hoped for. It was something else, a scary story I'd walked into blind. I hugged my knees, listening, waiting for whatever was rustling to make its move, knowing I'd come to the wrong place for peace. Morning light was weak, clouds choking the sun. I rolled off the cot, neck stiff, and checked my stuff. Problem 1. My sandwiches were bad, mold spots, even in the cooler. I tossed them, stuck with crackers now, not enough for 5 days. My water was fine, but I'd sipped too much, spooked last night. City boy mistake, thinking I'd nail camping without a plan. I looked out at my Dodge, something was wrong. The tailgate was down, toolbox open, glinting in the gray. I'd locked it tight, heart pounding. I grabbed my keys and headed down, stairs swaying, each clang too loud. The woods were still, no breeze, just that rustle again, faint, in the brush. At the truck, tools were scattered, screwdriver, wrench, not random. Someone had been here, messing with me. I gathered what I could, checking the cab. Nothing stolen, but my seat was moved, like someone sat there. My skin prickled. Could have been Esther, right? But she'd left yesterday. I slammed the tailgate, scanning the trees. The air felt thick, like it carried eyes. I climbed back up, legs heavy, telling myself it was kids, vandals. Deep down, I knew better. Mistake number 2, ignoring the obvious. In the cabin, I tried the desk radio. Static, then a voice, "Go back," gone fast. I smacked it, got nothing, my hands clammy. Prank? Ranger? Out here, neither fit. I paced, floor creaking, mind spinning. Options: drive to town, burn gas I needed, or stay, stretch my crackers. The map showed a store 15 miles off, roads rough. I wasn't sure the truck would make it, not after that toolbox stunt. I decided to scout nearby, maybe find a creek or ranger. I grabbed my harmonica, stupid, but it steadied me, and went down again. The trail was faint, choked with vines, air damp and sour, like rot. A mile in, I saw a sign. Crow's Perch, 1972. Cool, but the rustle followed, closer now, like footsteps pacing me. The woods seemed to shift, paths curling wrong, like a scary maze I didn't choose. Then I found it, a watch, cheap digital, face cracked, lying in the dirt. Fresh, not weathered, like someone dropped it running. My pulse spiked. Camper's trash, maybe, but it felt left, like the toolbox. I backed away, eyes darting. The rustle stopped, but a shadow flicked in the trees, fast, human-shaped. I froze, heart hammering, then bolted back, the tower my only shield, or so I thought. Climbing up, I kept looking over my shoulder. The watch, the truck, that voice. It was stacking up, small but disturbing as hell. I locked the cabin, hands sweaty, and checked the windows. The woods looked calm, too calm, like a held breath. I could leave now, risk the roads, but evening was creeping in, and those trails at dusk? No chance. I'd stay, eat light, play a tune to chill. Bad call. I sat, blowing a shaky note on the harmonica, the sound thin, swallowed by the cabin. It helped, barely, like humming in a storm. But the air was wrong, sour smell stronger, seeping through the walls. I told myself it was the river, like Indy's alleys after rain. But this wasn't home. This was me, alone, in a place that felt alive with something horror-tinged, waiting to pounce. Dusk fell, the cabin dim, my flashlight flickering. I doodled the watch, lines jagged, trying to focus. The rustle came back, louder, below, circling the tower. I stopped, pen frozen, hearing a new sound, a low hum, not wind, like voices blending. My throat tightened, knowing I'd ignored too much, and whatever was out there was done hiding, ready to make this nightmare real. The hum turned my gut to knots, vibrating the floor. I dropped my harmonica, notes clanging, and crept to the window. The woods were black, my flashlight useless. Then I saw it, a glow, small, weaving through the trees below. Not a flashlight, too steady, like a lantern. My heart slammed. That hum wasn't random. It was people, chanting low, wrong, like a horror movie I'd stumbled into. I switched off the light, dark swallowing me, and pressed against the wall. The glow split, 2 lights now, circling the tower's base. I held my breath, sweat cold, picturing my shop. Wrenches, banter, safety. Not here. A creak hit the stairs, slow, heavy, someone climbing. I gripped the desk, my only weapon a cracked mug. This was real, scary, and I was the fool stuck in it, no way out. The creaking stopped, just below the cabin. Silence pressed, thick, then a voice. Malcolm, soft, outside the door. My blood froze. How'd they know me? I slid under the cot, dust choking me, heart roaring. The door rattled, locks shaking, like they were teasing. I thought of bar fights, quick punches, done. This was slower, planned, disturbing, like they wanted me to squirm before the end. I stayed still, praying they'd leave. A laugh broke out, sharp, joined by another, echoing round the platform. My skin crawled. I pictured the watch, its owner, running, caught. Was that me now? The rattling grew, door groaning, and I crawled out, grabbing my backpack. Keys, crackers, nothing useful. The radio was dead, no help. Mistake number 3, thinking I could wait this out, like a bad shift. I risked a look, shadows moved outside. 3 at least, tall, holding those glowing things. Not lanterns, jars, maybe, flickering weird. My mind screamed cult, like tabloid crap I'd laughed at. No laughing now. A thud hit the wall, hard, shaking glass. I flinched, dropping my mug, shards loud. The laugh stopped, replaced by chants. Words I didn't know, twisting my head. They'd heard, and they were coming. I shoved the desk against the door, arms burning, knowing it wouldn't hold. The chants grew, pulsing, like the forest joined in. A shadow filled the window, still, watching. I ducked, pulse deafening, smelling that sour rot again, stronger, like it rode with them. I told myself to fight, grab a shard, yell, but fear locked me. The lock clicked, bending, and I backed to the cot, tripping, knowing I'd ignored every sign. The door shook, desk sliding, and a new sound started, tapping, slow, on the roof. My eyes shot up, ceiling creaking, something heavy up there. I clutched my keys, useless, picturing Indy's streets, safe, gone. The chants turned to whispers, "He's ours," and my stomach dropped. This wasn't random. It was personal, horror in every sound, and I was trapped in their game. I sank to the floor, backpack hugged tight, keys biting my hand. The tapping spread, walls, glass, like they were everywhere. I covered my ears, but it sank in, relentless, a taunt. The door groaned, ready to give, and I saw eyes, real, glinting, through a window crack. My breath hitched, panic drowning me, knowing this tower was theirs, and I'd walked right into something scarier than I'd ever imagined. The whispers surged, shaking the cabin, and a hand tested the door, slow, sure, like they had all night. I scrambled back, hitting the wall. No plan, just dread. The glows outside danced, closing in, and I knew something was wrong, dead wrong, like I'd tripped into their world, and they weren't letting me trip out. The hand on the door snapped me awake. I yanked the desk away, grabbed my backpack, and flung the door open, wind hitting hard. The platform was empty, but those glowing jars hung in the trees below, swaying like traps. I bolted down the stairs, metal screaming, expecting hands to snatch me. My dodge was my shot, but the chants were loud, circling, like the woods themselves were closing in on me. I hit the ground, sprinting, keys slippery with sweat. A glow flashed, someone's jar, too close. I dove behind my truck, gravel biting my palms, heart pounding. The chants grew, run, run, mocking, too many voices. My toolbox was still scattered, wrench glinting. I grabbed it, better than nothing, and slid into the cab, locking doors. The engine roared, headlights catching figures, hooded, still, scattering fast. I peeled out, trail rutted, truck shaking, the flatbed rattling loose tools. The glows followed, darting through trees, not quitting. I gripped the wheel, picturing my shop, oil stains, normal. Not this horror, this chase. Something hit the windshield, a stick, cracking glass. I swerved, heart in my throat, vision webbing. The chants stayed, louder, like they rode with me, daring me to crash in this scary mess. The road narrowed, trees clawing the truck. My gas was okay, but the gauge ticked down fast. Damn it, Malcolm, why so sloppy? A figure stepped out, tall, jar glowing, unmoving. I jerked left, scraping brush, tires screaming. Pain shot through my arm, glass cut, blood hot. I pushed harder, trail a blur, thinking of wrecks I'd fixed, mangled steel, bad ends. I wasn't that guy, but here I was, running for my life. The truck lurched, engine coughing, slowing in mud. No way. I pumped the gas, wheels spinning, chants closing in. I locked eyes on the rear view, glows everywhere, like fireflies from hell. I grabbed my wrench, backpack, and bailed, sprinting into the woods, trees thick, hiding me. The truck died behind, useless now. Footsteps followed, slow, sure, like they knew I'd tire, loving the horror of it. I crashed through vines, wrench heavy, lungs burning. A glow flicked ahead, another jar, hung like a lure. I veered, tripping on roots, wrench slipping. I grabbed it, crawling, hearing my name. Malcolm, whispered, chilling my blood. I pictured bar fights, quick, done. This was endless, life or death, and I was losing. I found a ditch, slid in, mud cold, holding still, praying they'd pass. They didn't. Boots crunched, glows weaving, chants soft but sharp. I gripped the wrench, ready to swing, but my arm shook, cut deep, blood soaking my sleeve. A voice laughed, "He's close," and my gut sank. I moved, low, ditch shallow, toward a light. Real, maybe a road. Hope sparked, but a wire snagged my leg. Tight, cutting. I yanked free, pain blinding, but a shadow loomed. Fast, club raised. My head cracked, world tilting, glows the last thing I saw. I woke, face down, ditch gone, just trees. My wrench was nearby, bloodied, not mine. No pack, no keys, just me, alive, barely. The light was closer. A house, maybe. I staggered up, arm useless, each step agony. Hearing chants in my head. Were real, I couldn't tell. I ditched the truck, the tower, but not them. Not this scary chase that felt like it owned me. The light grew. Cabin, windows dark, no help. I limped on, forest thinning, a road glinting. I waved my good arm, a truck's headlights slowing. I thought I'd made it, but the chants hummed, faint behind. I'd run, but not far enough, still caught in their game, with horror breathing down my neck, ready to strike. I collapsed by the road, arm bleeding, head pounding. The truck stopped, driver yelling, but I barely heard, waving my wrench like a flag. He helped me in, face pale, asking what happened. I mumbled nonsense, eyes on the trees, glows gone but there. My mistake was running blind, thinking distance meant safety. It didn't. This horror wasn't done, and I dragged it with me. The driver sped off, radio crackling, me slumped, blood pooling. I saw a glint, my harmonica, in my pocket, bent but whole. Dumb, but it grounded me, like a piece of indie I'd kept. Then I heard it, a hum, soft, from the truck's bed. My gut twisted. I whispered, "Stop," but he didn't hear, focused on the road. I glanced back. Nothing, just tarp, flapping. But the hum grew, chanting again, and I knew I'd brought them along. We hit a gas station, neon harsh. Cops called. I told my story. Tower, jars, wires, sounding nuts. They found my Dodge, clean, parked miles away, no blood, no tools. I clutched the harmonica, its metal warm, like it remembered. The driver left, spooked, and I sat, bandaged, alone. A cop said, "Lucky you got out." Lucky? I'd left someone, something, behind, and that was tragedy, waiting to bite. Back in Indy, I locked my doors, quit the shop, saw glows in every shadow. Weeks later, a jar, glass, empty, sat on my porch, harmonica inside, scratched with hours. I smashed it, glass cutting, blood mixing with fear. My mistake was keeping it, thinking it was mine. It wasn't. They'd marked me, tied me to Crow's Perch, to them, in a horror I couldn't burn away. I moved, new city, new name, but the chants followed, faint in dreams, loud in storms. I saw a news clip, hiker gone, Kankakee Woods, watch found. Like mine, cracked. I'd run, but left tracks, and they'd followed, patient, cruel. Tragedy wasn't just that night. It was knowing I'd never be free, that I'd carried their game home, a scar that hummed with their voices. I tried therapy, bars, denial, but the harmonica's tune stuck, sour, like their chant. I'd been prey, picked for a tower they owned, and escaping only tightened their grip. My shop crew'd call me paranoid, but they didn't see the jars, feel the wire. I burned my maps, but kept one doodle. The tower, jagged, true. It was proof, or a curse, tying me to a place I'd never leave. I walk in these streets, jumping at Russell's, expecting hoods and alleys. The tower was their altar, and I'd knelt, blind, thinking camping was safe. Now, safety's a lie, replaced by eyes, by hums, by a dead I didn't ask for. I'd fight, but they're shadows, slipping closer, and that's the horror, knowing they'll call my name again soon. Tragedy's my shadow, heavy, cold, born in Crow's Perch, fed by my run, my fight, my hope. I'd saved myself, but lost myself, and they knew it, laughing somewhere, jars glowing, waiting. I'd escaped, but not really. Their chants my heartbeat now, and no roads long enough to outrun that. No lock strong enough to keep them out. I'm alive, but caught. A mechanic who fixed nothing, who played a tune they heard, who ran but never arrived. Kankakee's theirs, and so am I, tied to a tower, a night, a mistake that writes itself in blood, in whispers, in a horror that lives in me, forever, no end, just them, always them.